Ah, well, would you look at that? It's just gone 11 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of September. I nearly said November there. I'm wishing the year
Sorry,
away.
love. Sorry, love. I wonder if we could do that again. We've got that one for safety. And if we could do that, Phil, the client would just like you to do that again. And
I totally
understand. In your own time, 3, 2, 1, and go.
Oh, it's just gone 11 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd of September, and you're listening to The Daily Show.
Phil. Thank you so much. We'll let you know. We've got Matt Lucas coming in to do the voice now. Hi, Matt. How are you? It's for frozen peas, but we want it to be dramatic, but with a slight ironic smile in your voice, but sincerity.
Veronica Curran says, "Good morning, lovely peeps."
Oh, hello.
And Emma Webb says, "Hello there."
Hello there.
I just assume that that's how Emma is saying it. I don't know for sure that's how she's actually greeting.
How much should she be saying? Hello there.
It could be
like that. She could be going, or should be. I mean, could be Emma Webb. She could be going, hello there. All right.
Yeah, it could easily be. I don't know. The truth is, I'm not sure.
I know. Could be a load of things. Paul Claridge. Good morning, everyone. What a lovely day it is so far. What that means, he hasn't been spat on, punched in the face, beaten up, abused, or pushed off a ladder.
Sharon McGovern, you're too
we love
kind.
Sharon
far
McGovern.
Too kind. Morning, handsome boys. Andy Lucas also says good morning. So do you know what, everyone?
I haven't got that. I haven't got that. Oh yeah, just popped up. I'm making a tahini and
tahini and honey holla.
No.
That's not easy to say.
No, Andy, no. I suddenly find myself unable to come round. I don't even know where you live. I find myself unable, sadly, to come round, Andy, and share in your... No, that's not my cup of tea at all. Sorry. Sharon McGovern.
It's a good job. She's not offering it to you in a cup.
Fantastic. Yeah, it just sounds ghastly. Sharon McGovern.
Wow.
Well, no, it doesn't sound good. Can't you just make... I'm a honey holla. Actually, just make some holla. Then post it to me. I wish I
could.
Just post it to me. Yeah, we miss those days when you had a life and you could do that.
Joel Silverman says, good morning. I spent the whole of yesterday knowing it was Thursday, but feeling like it was Wednesday, completely confused. It is Friday, right?
Yeah, it's Friday.
But you know, Jules, you'd be even more confused and forgiven for being confused after my superb introduction just now. I can only apologize.
What was that word again? After your superb what?
Introduction.
Thank you. Got that one as well. Okay.
You're off on one today.
I'm in good form. Emma Webb.
Oh, is that what we call it?
Shut up. Hello there. My style is of Charles Hawtrey and Kenneth Williams. I have never. Let's see if I can do it. Yeah, song is about. I have never been so insulted all my life. I love Kenneth Williams.
Hello there.
And Charles Hawtrey. Oh, hello. He wasn't apparently. They were both very difficult people, but I've got all of Kenneth Williams.
Luke Newman, this is great news. Well done.
What?
Luke says, thanks to all the players, management, sponsors, and fans for Thursday's fundraiser between Ponton United Youth Football Club.
What's the matter with you today? Ponton United.
What did I say?
Ponton.
Sorry. Versus Gransden under 17s. Mm-hmm. You raised an incredible £306.78 for the Men to Talk, or for Men to Talk. Look at that.
You know what that means? We've got to do. I switch off straight away as it's football. Right. Well done, Luke. Yeah, Luke was talking about this on the Wednesday show, and that was absolutely great. Richard Vero, my old classmate from school, who lives in... I think we could do this. Lives in Colditz. I've mentioned it every time he comes on, but you think I'm joking. No, he lives in Colditz in Germany.
I absolutely promise you, no one thinks you're joking. You say that every time. No one thinks you're joking.
Good morning from Colditz.
Yes, but you should see what he says.
The glorified neo-Nazis leading the poll for the up-and-coming general election. Richard, nothing changes there. They're Germans. Sorry. You know, forgive and forget. Sod that. What Richard is saying now, Richard and I, he came over to London. We had a really interesting conversation. Right. So I've known Richard, since he was 12 or something like that. And in where he lives in Colditz, and he won't mind me saying this because he's gone public with this, otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned it. Where he lives in Colditz, I mean, think of the bloody irony here, folks, right? It's the absolute sort of epicenter. This will drive you mad, Phil. I know how upset you'll get. And when he told me, I was like freaking livid. It's the epicenter of Nazis. If you think Nazis have gone from Germany, dream on. Far right, and they're armed. They are armed. And Richard told me all these stories, and I said, go to the press. You know, anyone interested? No. Because we're all friends now. It's all part of the EU. It's all marvellous, isn't it? So the neo-Nazis are leading the poll for the up-and-coming general election. How does that make you feel? For those who do not learn the lessons of history, you are doomed to repeat it. Luke Newman and Potter under 17s have put the Fermenter Talk logo.
What's wrong with you? It's Potten.
Are you stinging, boy? Are you stinging? It's only because you're always so accurate and so precise.
No, I'm not.
So
I bluster my way through these things.
You don't bluster your way. Now, you see, you were late this morning, and I know what's going on. You were late, and now you're scrabbling to catch up, and there's nothing worse.
No, it's true. It's terrible. You chase your tail.
No, you can't do it.
Good.
You can't do it in life. It's like when I was way, way younger, I would Barry J. Allen. Oh, he'll save every one of us. Hello, one all. Hi, Barry.
Now, don't flash at us.
Anyway, I'd arrive from work for a New Year's Eve party, and of course everybody else was hammered, and you'd try to catch up when you were little, you know, when you were much younger, I don't know, 20 or something.
Oh, I see. You mean you tried to catch up on the drinking?
Yeah, horrible. What a stupid... But you know, you don't when you're starting out in life, you don't think of these things, right? You know, you just don't. Luke, I'd like to know how your book's doing, by the way, fella. How's the book doing? Is it doing good? It's great.
I have a little bit of a dilemma.
What's the matter?
Well,
what's the matter?
Between you and me.
Okay, don't let it go any further. Everybody, don't let it go any further. We'll know it's you. It'll be one of you if this leaks out. Go on.
The room that I'm currently speaking to you from.
Yes. Is it Rupert's
before?
Office?
No.
What?
Beforehand, before I came in here.
It was a bordello?
I always book the room for 10:45. We have a booking system here, you see. We've got shared rooms that we can all use.
Okay.
And I booked the room from 11:15 like I normally do. Anyway, little did I know it was the boss who was sitting in here before me.
Yeah. So is there gold dust everywhere? And just severed heads? Is there just severed heads and blood everywhere?
No. Much better than that. The boss hadn't quite finished, but had stepped out. So one of my colleagues said, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Oh, God, no.
Shifted all his things out of here. Moved everything.
So thank God you got a job with me.
Tell me about it.
You thank God you got a job with me. So let me just see. So all the boss's stuff was moved out. I'm going to guess here, and I am only guessing. You think, hey, great, I can get early and do all the links and everything. And in walks the boss and goes, where the is my stuff?
Well, luckily,
This is worst case
said colleague who did say, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's fine," was actually in very close proximity at that moment and did take full responsibility. So I was technically off the hook. But
now, had it been me, Phil, I would have gone, I can't believe you did that, Phil.
But there was a certain
look. Did you move all
look.
his stuff for?
But there was a certain look. No, I know you do that.
Yeah,
there was a certain look that I do get used to from people.
Which is, who the hell are you?
Well, no, it's as if he wants to slap me.
Oh. Was he looking at you going, bloody hell, Julia Hartley-Brewer's cut her hair? Not sure it suits her. Was that the look?
No, I'm shorter than Julia Hartley-Brewer. So.
She's a lot of woman there. Whew, get your money's worth.
Okay, you just said that, not me.
Tall. That's what I'm saying.
Luke Newman says, by the way, the Mental Health Moles book is in 2 independent bookstores, currently talking to a few more, sold approximately 160 copies. Bravo. So at least $2.99 per book goes for men to talk, which is brilliant.
Have we thought about putting this on our website? You know, because we want to support you on this. Although you're nothing to do with our station, but we
I love
your
the way
support.
that you asked Luke, have you thought about putting it on our website? As if like Luke is somehow in charge of the website.
He's not. I'm in charge of it. But
that's what I thought.
Would he be interested?
I see.
Would he be interested?
Luke, what Russ is trying to say to you is he said, would you like to put a link on the men's radio station website in a bit to try and support the book and maybe hopefully sell a few more copies? That's what he's saying.
And only 50% going to men's radio station.
Thank
you. Up here for thinking, down there for dancing. Paul Claridge, Phil, you clearly haven't seen the security guards on their way up.
To politely help you leave the building. Now, I have to tell you, bearing in mind that I know the security here has been upped at the moment.
Oh, is it? What's it gone to? DEFCON 4?
No. Well, sort of. It's primarily thanks to exhausting reprobates. Extinction Rebellion. And what's happened is that they are...
those little shits want now?
They're outside. I don't mean XR. I mean that the security guards are standing quite severely outside the building to stop anyone from storming it.
Good. So they should.
And no, that's fine. But bearing in mind that I see these security guards on a daily basis, and I know most of them by now.
But you look shifty. You look like some sort of overprivileged white middle-class twat who just wants to cause damage and get away with it.
Well, don't you know all white middle-class people are overprivileged, so we're constantly told in this day and
we know
age.
that. You
anyway,
suffer from that. You suffer from
But might I suggest, I'm not overprivileged, by the way, might I suggest, though, that bearing in mind that I know these security guards pretty much, most of them on
Terry, Barry,
sort of
Dave.
first name terms, they still insist on the past being shown?
Because... Phil,
but I think...
Why do I have to lead your career all the time? Phil, have you not seen enough films where they make a Phil Dave mask, walk in pretending to be you, the cravat carries it off, and it's not.
Good gracious me.
It's Montgomery Smythe from Extinction Rebellion who needs a good kicking.
But I would suggest, though, that it's quite reassuring based on the fact they're wearing cameras.
Good.
So I think the reason why they do that is because they're playing to the cameras. And who would ever do that? Anyway, Luke Newman says...
Hang on, stop. Rewind. Explain that. I'm not sure I'm following.
They're wearing security cammers, okay? They're actually wearing
Extinction Rebellion, the little shits? Or
the security guards. Security
Dave,
guards
Barry,
are wearing...
Terry and Mohammed. All right, so they're wearing security cameras.
They're all wearing little security cameras on their jackets to record.
Good, so they should. This is a great idea.
I agree. No, I agree. Totally, they should be wearing
because they say, you did this, you did this. Hey, let's just look at the footage, shall we?
I know. I totally get it. But what I'm trying to get at is the reason why I think they're asking for the security pass. This is riveting stuff, I know. The reason why they're asking for the security pass is so that they're seen on camera doing that anyway. As I was saying, Luke Newman says, on another note, I had a surprise visit to A&E yesterday.
Oh, nothing better. You've got 7 hours to kill. Nothing better.
He said, oh, my good God. He says, my little lad decided to have his head glued after hitting it on the table.
Yeah.
He's fine.
What about him? What about the table, Luke? This is what everybody wants to know.
I have to tell you.
Okay.
Luke, been there, done that. When I don't know how old I was, but I was running. We went to go and visit. No, we went to go and visit some family friends who've since unfortunately moved to Israel. And I say unfortunately because we missed them, not because it's unfortunate they've moved there. I'd do the same if I could. But who have moved to Israel. And when they were here, we went round to them for dinner one evening. I don't know if I was about maybe in single digits. Let's say I was 8 or 9 years old, running around chasing sort of my fellow aged individuals who were there as well. And I tripped and caught my forehead on the corner of the coffee table and slice above the eye. Oh dear, not good. And Luke also says, by the way, in other news,
I bet you were really, really annoying as a child.
Well, some things never change. Luke also says that my dog is pregnant. Is he? It's a clever trick. He's a boy. Oh, your dog, is pregnant.
My dog is pregnant. What? Okay. The dog is pregnant. I don't even want to go there particularly. I don't know how that happened. And Luke says the table is fine too. Well, priorities, Luke, as you rightly say, priorities. That's the important thing. Got a packed show for you, by the way. Some amazingly very interesting guests. Think of the opposite of me and Phil. That's the kind of guest we've got coming on.
Oh, what caliber?
People who actually are interested and who know what the hell they're talking about.
Fantastic.
Paul Claridge, Lord Ladder. That could be his new name, Lord Ladder. Never going to make 3 hours.
That's a step up from his last title.
Yeah. Have you rung him today?
Hey.
How often can we keep this up? I worked in security. I worked in security in the civil service for many years. Everyone had to show their passes every time.
I hate that I laughed at that, but anyway.
There you go. Thanks very much. Everyone had to show their passes every time they entered the building, including the ministers and the Secretary of State. Even the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, insisted on showing his pass when he entered the building. Alexander Lichtenfeld, she of the asymmetrical hair and huge round glasses and great talent. Morning, chaps. Good morning to you, Alex. Phil, you did miss. I don't know how to break this to you because it's going to depress you and you're going to feel unimportant. But we had a very, very interesting debate on Wednesday where you were not available. Oh. And Lucas reminded me of it. And it really went to the heart of everything we're trying to do at Men's Radio. Bacon sandwich. Do you have red sauce or brown sauce? I didn't open this particular can of worms and everybody piled in like it was bigger than a Brexit debate back in the day. We became Radio Norwich for at least 10 minutes. It was brilliant.
You see, I walk away for 5 minutes and that's what happens.
But everybody loved it and the figures were really good. Wednesday, the figures were really good.
I'm really worried. Why is it whenever I'm off, that's when the figures go up? But let's not dwell on that.
I don't know. Let's try and extrapolate what the thoughts might be there. Phil, yeah, it was brilliant.
I can go back to work if you drop.
No, don't. No, what work? You didn't get the memo from the boss. Who is he? Why is he in my office? Why did he move my papers?
Oh, to be fair, though, I'm not technically speaking in his office per se.
No, I know. So it's a meeting. It's a meeting.
It's a shared meeting space. Just to give it its full Americanized title.
Is that what they call it? Is that the latest bullshit? It's a shared meeting space.
A shared meeting space.
Really, and everybody's contribution is like, really not particularly valid. That's what I'd be saying. So
now I have to ask you.
Go on.
Abba Reunion. What do we think?
Fantastic. Why not? They're great. They were geniuses.
Yeah. I just hope they don't undo all of the amazing stuff they did do.
They won't do it. They've got too high a standard.
I hope so.
It's not like Piccadilly Witch getting back together, or something like that. No. You can read Ramsey's comment. I'll get back to Abba in a minute. Go on, read Ramsey's comment. Go on. It's right up your street.
Ramsey says, just heard, due to the lack of drivers and Brexit supplies of Branston are running out at supermarkets, it's left the company in a bit of a pickle. Because you see, Branston is a brand of pickle.
Oh, I see.
And that normally goes into sandwiches. And because there's apparently a shortage of it, it's left the company in a bit of a pickle, because a pickle has two meanings in this context. Because what happens is the pickle is the stuff you put in the sandwich. A pickle is also another way of saying that a company's been left in the doodah.
Do you think Ramsey knew any of that?
I think maybe he's a comedian and he doesn't know it.
Right, Veronica Curran up in Edinburgh. Can I ask the listeners for some support for Cuddy's fortnightly Thursday 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Guy is fabulous. Thank you. Yes, he is. Now, I have to tell you that from next Thursday, he of the long hair and ridiculously handsome face, Mr. Oliver Mammon, with his ABC of CBD, is back from his travels.
Oh.
He's back. So Cuddy will be going to a new time. But he is a fantastic. I absolutely love that show. Love that show. Love what he says. Listen to this. Paul Claridge. Best day at work in civil services when we had Frank Bruno. I did panto with Frank. Working with us for a few hours while he waited for a replacement for his broken down hire car. We gave him a blazer and had him standing at the front door inspecting passes. What a sport he was. Very nice man, Frank. He was lovely. I worked with him every day, 2 shows a day for 8 weeks. I think we did 82 shows together. No, Luke.
Now that's long-term service.
Yeah, Luke, you were doing so well, and now we've got the winner takes it all means Abba's bank balance. Well, they deserve it. They were fabulous, Abba. Clever.
Just think of all of the smiles they've raised on people's faces.
It shows you the state of the world when the biggest story on social media yesterday was that Abba are getting back, and everybody was thrilled, and I was thrilled. It put a smile on my face because I'm huge fans always. I thought Abba were great. Abba were great. Luke Newman, he's very busy today. Old Luke. We did. You're
gonna get a repetitive strain injury if you're not careful. Only older ones will get that. We did talk the other day about shortages in various supermarkets and hospitals. Yes, we did. We're going to come back to that. I want to talk to you about that, young Philip. Well, yesterday, not only did they not have toys at McDonald's, now they don't have milkshakes or McFlurries. Oh, dear.
You know, I'll tell you something. We make light of it because I couldn't care less if they got milkshakes or they don't. I never go there. I've got nothing against them. I just don't eat fast food. All right. I have KFC twice a year, maybe. Twice a year, probably that's it. That's the only one I eat. I won't go to McDonald's. I won't go to Burger King. I won't go to Pizza Hut. It's just not my cup of tea. I just don't like the food.
I can hand on heart say I think that in the last 20 years, I've probably been to McDonald's 5-6 times, maybe.
Yeah.
I just have no appeal. This has absolutely no appeal to me whatsoever. Anyway.
I would come out and it never looks like the adverts. And the other thing is I always come out and my stomach is killing me when I eat it. I just don't like it. It's like eating.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to eat the toys, to be fair.
I thought they were. Well, what? They're not edible.
No. Well, that's the problem. I mean, they call them happy meals, but it's very misleading.
What about that lovely sort of choux pastry? Looks like a box that it all comes in. You are supposed to eat that.
Well, that's at least a little more digestible. But one would. The advice is you're supposed to take it out of the box.
Oh, God, this explains so much.
I know.
Luke Newman, I shouldn't joke or moan. Consider I go to the slums in Kenya. Is it Kenya or Kenya? I say Kenya.
I say Kenya.
We're very fortunate. Damn right. Why do you do that, Luke? Oh, you've talked about it when you were a guest on the show. It's a hell of a thing to do.
Very admirable.
You're a better person than I, because I wouldn't do it. Why wouldn't I do it? Because there's so much stuff that needs doing here. If you've got food banks, we're one of the richest countries in the world, and we've got food banks. It's completely unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Shortages. Phil, were you on or not when I was talking about the fact that some people, one person I don't know, one person I know very well, went to the doctors and to have a regular test and wanted to have blood tests, and they said, well, we can't give you a blood test. Both these people who don't know each other, different parts of the country, said,
yes, you said they're running low on vials.
They didn't have any. Not low. They couldn't take blood tests, which is one of the most important things in
that made the news the other day. I sort of thought of you as soon as you said it. I thought, wow, it's actually made headlines.
It's completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Who the hell's in charge of the supply chain? You don't suddenly say, oh, you got any vials? And they go, no. When did we run out? Yesterday. You didn't tell me? No, I forgot. I was too worried about running out of McFlurries at McDonald's. The thing is, blood tests are so key, so important in the front line of detecting, for example, cancers and diabetes, all sorts of things. It's absolutely vital. To run out of vials in the United Kingdom so you can't have a blood test is immoral. It should be illegal. I mean, somebody's head should roll, but it won't, because no one's ever responsible for everything. It's shocking. Think about it, Phil. I mean,
I'm fully aware of how horrific It's just ridiculous, to say the least.
I'd like your view on this, young Philip. It is this. Not next week, week after, is Dementia Week on The Daily Show. And it's going to be all about every aspect of dementia, Alzheimer's. We've got leading experts lined up. We've got people who are experiencing it with their loved ones. It's a very important subject. It's always shoved under the carpet because it's not sexy. There's no upside to it. It's ghastly. And that's why we want to do 3 full shows. We're dedicating 5 hours, and it's taken a lot of planning, but I'm very, very excited about it. That kicks off on Monday, September the 13th, all about dementia. So we're dedicating all of that to it. The next thing I would like to do, and it came into my head yesterday, and I haven't even mentioned this to Phil, I would like your experiences of the NHS. I don't want it filtered by media spokespeople. I want it from the people it's there to look after, which is you. Not media spokespeople, not doing it from a political angle. I don't give a monkeys about that. I want to know how it worked out for you. Only because there was such a flurry this week of people trying to get a doctor. I put up a little cartoon by the wonderful Matt, who's probably in my opinion, the greatest cartoonist in the country. I think he's magnificent. And it was a cocktail party, and one person was shaking another's hand and the person was saying, "Oh, hello, I don't think we've ever met before. I'm your GP."
Very good.
Right. And everybody went nuts, saying, "Yeah." And although the gag is brilliant and Matt always on point, so many people said, "This is, I can't get an appointment. I've been told to wait X weeks." We've been told and drilled into us like good little drones that we are, save the NHS, save the NHS. And when I find out that they haven't got vials for blood,
I'm just
going, save the NHS what, from themselves? I have to say this sometimes. Now, the experience.
One would suggest, though, that the people who are responsible for purchasing things such as vials, it's probably not the medical staff, and there's certainly no reason.
It doesn't matter. There's still
but there's certainly no reason to tarnish the NHS medical staff, who obviously do an amazing job, to say that, look, somehow because some schmuck in admin hasn't ordered the vials, that suddenly they're all worth denigrating. But still, tricky.
How does it? NHS is the biggest organization outside of the Indian Railway. The Indian Railway is probably the biggest organization in the world. It's vast, and in terms of the number of employees. And I know this because I had to do lots and lots of research and writing on it when I was called in by the Department of Health for a year. It's all should be joined together, which was what we were trying to do in our department. Joined together. In 1 year, we saved 400 million quid. In the first 12 months of operation, 400 million pounds saved. What's up?
Okay. Can I have some of it?
No. Why? No,
because 400 million is quite a lot, and I just thought maybe you got some going for your best pal.
Well, Larry's all right. Larry doesn't need any money.
Yes. Anyway, it's speaking of the NHS, by the way, we have a GP coming up.
We do. So we can
at midday today, we're going to meet Dr. Jeff Foster.
Did you go to Gloucester?
Well, I wondered about that. Dr. Jeff has written a book called Man Alive, which was actually published about a couple of months ago. But what it is it's about empowering men and women with correct information and confidence to basically sort of see GPs with all facts, but not necessarily to cause any embarrassment. It's a fascinating subject because, of course, so many times we hear stories about people who quite literally die of embarrassment. Because
seriously?
Oh, what? They're too embarrassed to go to the GP?
They're too embarrassed to go and get it. I didn't mean they went so red their head exploded.
Yeah, no. They are so embarrassed by conditions that they simply don't want to go to a GP to get it sorted. So we're going to be talking about that a little later on. He's from midday. Then around 1 o'clock, we're going to meet a fascinating chap by the name of Euron Engler. Now, Euron is an educator and a coach, but what he does is he has a course that also is about empowerment. And we're going to be finding out a little bit about said course a little later on. So we've got some good guests.
I'm thinking when he comes on, you can see where I'm going with this, can't you? And you go, "You're on." He goes, "Yeah, no, I know, I can see." And you go, "You're on." And he goes, "Yes, Phil, I know, I can hear you. You're on." We could rinse that for at least 10 minutes.
It could go on for a while.
We could really squeeze every drop of humor out of that one. And Andrea Lucas says they've purchased, we're back to the blood vase, they've purchased some from somewhere, so no more problem. A, that's really very good. But B, how did it happen in the first place? And think about this, Andy. All the people who couldn't have the blood tests have now got to go back. They're nearly 5 million procedures behind schedule. 5 million. And now all the people who couldn't have blood tests, the most simple of bloody tests you can imagine, they've all got to go back to their GP to have them. Come on. Luke Newman, whose son decided to have an argument with the table yesterday and ended up in A&E. The A&E department in Bedford Hospital were incredible yesterday. Marvellous. That's what we want to hear.
Alex says, by the way, that is how Euron told her to pronounce his name.
What, Euron?
Yeah. I'm guessing it's an Israeli name, which is why I said it in that fashion.
So hopefully I'm right. I think he's doing it for effect. His real name is probably Terry, Dave, Brian.
Quite.
Anyone call it? Isn't it fascinating how names come in and out? Like the really old-fashioned names, like Maud and all those really old names are suddenly back in. George, all those sort of things, and names like I'm not being rude, like Barry, Anthony. Don't hear many
Peter.
Anthony's in it.
You don't see Peters.
Don't see that much more. It's so interesting. It's all cyclical, isn't it? The name's suddenly in vogue, and then
I know it's all fashion. It's funny actually, because my mother has often said that when she was at school, she was one of a number of Lindas. Well, and yet now
Linda's an absolute prime example. You don't hear of Linda.
It's true.
You don't hear Belinda, which is always a nice name. There's loads of names that just simply go. You don't hear many Phillips. I mean, you don't hear baby. Oh, I've had a baby. I'm going to call it Philip.
True.
And I'm not being rude. I'm just serious. I mean, this is how it is. Or Alan.
No mistake. I'm well aware. It's a case of what's in vogue or what's not. It's very peculiar. Ramsey says, speaking of the NHS, by the way, that I've had generally good experience of the NHS. Yes, there have been things that can be improved, but aren't we lucky that we all have collectively agreed the principle that access to healthcare is a right open to all rather than a luxury only available to those who can afford it? He says that both of my children were born in the NHS hospitals, and my mum's mental health and subsequent cancer treatment were taken care of by the NHS.
Yeah, well, I have said, unfortunately, too much experience of that.
Ramsey, make no mistake, I completely agree. We are incredibly lucky, but unfortunately, we're also very unlucky in the sense that people do. Make no mistake, I am not suggesting for a split second, that it is you or anyone in your family. But what I mean is that we unfortunately do hear of instances where people take gross advantage of it, subsequently clogging up the works for people who genuinely need the treatment. And I don't think that's very good at all. It really does bother the heck out of me that that's the case. And I've often thought, and I've said it before on this program, I'd happily say it again, I think that there should be penalties in place for those who do go through treatment on the NHS, but those who waste time, missed appointments, goodness only knows how much that must cost the NHS. Why don't we claw back some of that money? Why don't we claw back some of that money from those who are going to waste NHS time? Fine them. Do what you have to. Put a deposit down if you must, whatever it takes.
Lloyd Beanie says, bring Jeff Bezos in to sort out the NHS. Well,
then you can get next day treatment through NHS Prime.
It would be, it's although some of you might think, well, silly suggestion. These people, such as Jeff Bezos, did not get to have a hugely successful company because they didn't run it in a way that resonated with people. That's the point. And there's far too much management at the NHS, far too much management, way too much middle management, and ticking boxes and rushing around with bits of paper and clipboards and all this crap. Absolutely right. Let's be very clear. The staff, the actual staff, the people who are doing the actual work of the NHS, I mean the medical work, are fantastic. Just fantastic. Every encounter I've had when it's been a serious matter has been dealt with magnificently. Absolutely magnificently. If it's a big problem, they will normally sort it out. It's just great. But it does need complete reorganization. And because it's enshrined in this sort of mythical Narnia world, you mustn't look at it with a commercial eye. Looking at it with a commercial eye does not mean you're going to be charged 75 guineas, to go and see a doctor for an ingrowing fingernail. You're not. This is nonsense. It means bringing in some rigor, bringing in some economic discipline. That's what it means. It doesn't mean passing the charges on to the public. This is the great myth. I could talk about it for hours. It's something I'm very, very passionate about because I had to work on it for a year. Veronica Curran, NHS is run by management which treat nothing. Veronica, what's going on there? If you had a square sausage this morning for breakfast, NHS is run by management which treat nothing but stressful working by the staff. All right, I'm going to try and interpret. Are you saying that the management are not medical staff? So I don't know what the hell they're doing, but working with the actual medical staff find it horribly, horribly stressful. Is that what you're saying? No, Andy Lucas, are we allowed to say this? I'm going to say it.
Well, I mean, it is technically speaking an expression.
Isn't it fascinating? We even have to ask ourselves. I mean, we're not going to get attacked by Apaches or Cheyennes, are we? Too many chiefs, not enough Indians or appreciated Indians. Before you all write in, it's an expression about Native Americans. Too many chefs spoil the broth would be another version, but then all the
you can't say that in case it's offensive to ingredients.
Yeah, well, it's broth. That's brothist. That's brothist. Too many chefs spoil the broth.
Do you know, I heard this week, and I can't believe I missed this one from the Charge of the Woke Brigade, that apparently now there are outcries based on the fact that certain actors, or indeed actresses, if we're allowed to even use that word anymore.
All actors. I don't think we've got
certain actors, actresses, or performers, as some people wish to be called, because they are getting roles that are to portray someone, shall we say, of a heavier weight, and they eat their way to the role. In other words, they have to gain weight in order to play said role.
Yep.
There are now people who are saying that exacerbates fat phobia, because what you're doing. Oh,
shut up!
Because what you're doing is you are denying people who are larger size the opportunity to play those roles. Did you ever hear such a thing?
Well, I have, because you'll probably get loads because you've got the word rolls. They'd probably misinterpret. They probably think cheese and ham rolls. They'd probably be there.
I did use that line. I have used that line in a recorded program that will be played out this weekend.
Well done, you.
I said that I did say that it's because all the actors are taking the roles, and I said no, not the bread rolls. So
that's very good.
Thank you. Do you know what? So. That was a sneaky peek.
Ray Gelato came up with something months ago. We were having a quiet coffee together, and he said, "Do you know what I think?" And I went, "What?" And he said, "I think the world," because I don't want to nick the phrase. It wasn't my phrase; it was his phrase. He says, "I think the world is having a collective nervous breakdown," and I think he's absolutely right. I think some of this stuff is so bonkers and so stupid, and an utter
but what annoys me
of time.
Has no one ever heard of the expression "don't sweat the small stuff"?
Yes,
this is what really irritates me. So this is what irritates me, is people are so busy flapping about things that are so completely unimportant and pointless that they actually take their eye off the bigger things. So, for example, whilst everyone in the woke brigade is going around worrying about whether or not someone is inadvertently hurting someone else's feelings, we are not necessarily paying attention to the fact that there is exorbitant knife crime going on in our great capital.
So much easier. It's so much easier, isn't it, Phil, to go on a diversity course, or if you're upset and turn around at broadcasters' homes, than actually tackle knife crime.
We are not paying attention to the fact that we have let standards in this country plummet to such depths that it's embarrassing. You'd be forgiven for thinking we're developing world with some of the things that we do in this country. It is just horrific. And it's all in the name of trying to make sure we don't offend.
It's bullshit. Let me tell you something. All of this stuff, I'm not even concerned about that. Look at the much, much bigger picture.
You're quite right.
In the world now.
That's the bigger picture.
Remind me to smack you in the gob tomorrow.
Oh, yes. We're luncheoning tomorrow, aren't we?
Yeah. I was going to have a nice weekend and I forgot I'd invited you. Christ. Sometimes, you just say things and then you instantly regret it. Like, what are you doing on Saturday? Why didn't you come over for lunch? How the hell did that slip out of my mouth? How?
Well, I'm very grateful. You did also say, by the way, look at the bigger picture before I rudely interrupt.
Look at the bigger picture is this. While all this crap has been going on, this absolutely unimportant nonsense about pronouns, and it's an irrelevant load of bullshit. Let's just call it for what it is. Hi, Sen. China and Russia look at the West and laugh until they wee themselves. They look at us and the morons who are running half these countries and they're politically correct, and they just go, these people are idiots. We don't even need a spy network. They have destroyed themselves. So while everyone's been worrying about, is it an it, she, he, all this just made up nonsense, China's taken over the world. And Russia is stronger than ever. Look at America. A joke in the eyes of the world now. This affects us. This affects all of our thinking. Because we've grown up always thinking that America is, the world's, it's the bastion of democracy. It's the world's most powerful country. No, forget it. What's happened in Afghanistan is not just a disgrace. It's not just humiliating. It's not just incompetence off the scale of incompetence. But it unstabilizes the world. And that's way more important than if someone's going to be called fat. Sen, we dealt with that earlier in the show, mate. It's lovely for you to join us, but we've done all that. Thanks very much, but we've done all that. We're not going backwards. But bless you for coming along. Appreciate it. And I'm glad you're better. Here's the thing. This is one of these things are way more important. But we get, caught up in this crap. You see what I'm saying?
For sure.
I mean, what's going on?
We just wade our way through it. It's appalling.
Well,
it's so wrong the way that it completely and utterly distracts us from what we should be worrying about, what we should be concerned by.
Of course.
And yet, when anyone sort of says, hang on a second, this doesn't sound very mental health. Why are you talking about this? Well, allow me to elaborate a little bit.
It is.
On the contrary, it is very much about mental health, because actually what happens is when all of this nonsense is going on, and those of us who are, how can I be delicate, grown up and actually do see what the true problems in this world are, those problems are seemingly being ignored. And when something is out of your control and you can't do anything but look on in abject horror,
yep,
it makes you feel hellish,
It makes you
horrendous.
feel this big.
It makes you feel like there is actually no hope for tomorrow. Exactly. That's what it does. And I know so many people who think like that, who feel like that, and who are actually slowly but surely succumbing to that very notion that they feel the world around them is hopeless. Now,
well, I do. I'm already there. I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, Phil. I'm already there.
I know.
Let me give you another example, if I may. While everyone's worrying about, can we save fat? Do it. Gives a shit. Stop dressing this up.
I've called people fat before. It didn't bother me at
all.
Stop
dressing it up.
Stop eating.
What it is.
If you are fat, stop eating so much. It's as simple as that. No one's got the audacity to say that.
The other day, you got an overactive knife and fork, mate. Stop it. That's what your problem is. That's your medical condition. Overactive knife and fork. Are you all right? Seem to have lost my colleague for a moment.
You idiot. Don't say that when I'm taking this mouthful.
Oh, dear God. Let's not watch somebody drown live on radio. Let me just... You see,
I had a mouthful of water.
I'm so sorry. I apologise. You can punch me tomorrow. Here's the thing, gang.
Hilarious.
See how these dots join up? For a second, just bear with me. And this isn't politics. This is life that is going to affect you, your kids, and your grandkids. And if we don't care about ourselves, at least let's care about what we leave behind, which in my case will be debt. Now, while everyone's been getting their...
What will your legacy be? Probably about 30,000 on the Barclaycard.
Yeah, probably so. While everyone's clutching their pearls over all sorts of issues which are an utter irrelevancy, China and Russia have been making enormous inroads. And I'm not talking about, there's a red under the bed, we've all got to be terrified. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pure practicalities. While everyone was dicking around with all this nonsense, right? China bought up huge swathes of Africa. Why? Did they want to go and build schools and hospitals like our friend Luke Newman? No, they couldn't give a toss about that. Why do they want it? They want the mineral rights. Afghanistan, a complete disaster. Why? Because it'll help the drug trade. Now that the Americans have been just embarrassed under that bumbling buffoon they've got, I say leading them, God almighty. Anyway.
Stumbling in front of them, I think is the word.
It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. Anyway, and please don't write in, you love Trump. No, Trump's not a nice man. But that doesn't mean you have someone who's clearly suffering early signs of dementia, leading what was the most powerful nation on the earth. We're all being forced out of petrol cars into electric cars. Bear with me. This is all linked together, right? You need lithium batteries. Petrol cars run on lithium batteries. That means you have to have lithium. People with the lithium will control the world. Don't you see that? People who are worried and clutching their pearls about it's their, she, her, I identify as a Dyson vacuum cleaner and all this bollocks, right? That's not going to save the world. It's going to save nothing.
And might I throw in as well, what do you think is going to happen?
So my point is, this is why I get this is why I get upset and depressed and feel utterly helpless watching the world go to hell in a handcart.
But might I also suggest as well, what on earth do you think is going to become of the Arab nations that we all go to at the moment for our oil supplies when we no longer have to give them our business? What do you think is going to happen out of curiosity?
Well, I thought about this. Oddly enough, I've thought about this a lot. What do you think is going to happen?
I think that we would just be a blot on the landscape that needs to be eradicated.
Precisely, because they'll have nothing to lose. They'll have nothing to lose.
We won't be needed. The West won't rely on the Arab nations, and therefore, oh dear. Oh, and look, by a curious coincidence, one of those nations has just been armed to the hills thanks to the really quick withdrawal of American troops.
$85 billion worth of equipment. $85 billion. worth of equipment left behind. Who the hell signed that off? And now you've got Taliban walking around in American uniforms, using American Humvees. They didn't dismantle it. They didn't blow the stuff up. This is the planning of an idiot. Even at Dunkirk, which could have been the world's a terrible tragedy. It was awful, but thanks to somehow the British spirit, hundreds of thousands of troops stranded on the Dunkirk beach were rescued with all the little boats. It was magnificent. They had to leave behind equipment. It was all destroyed. In other words, the barrels of the cannon and all of that, they were all destroyed, so they were useless. This isn't new thinking. And if I know that with absolutely no military background whatsoever, you would think the people in charge would go, well, obviously we can't leave the equipment, Phil. I think we better bugger the equipment up so that it's useless.
Ramsey, sorry, can I just sort of point out with Ramsey here that he's saying, quite rightly, he's saying, number one, Afghanistan's not an Arab country, which you are quite right. Sorry, Ramsey. I didn't mean to imply it was. That was just merely carrying on the conversation badly. So I apologize. I didn't mean that. No, but my point is that look at what's happened in Afghanistan. So in other words, there's also just an additional problem to face as well. So absolutely. And he also says it has no oil, which to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't. I'm more worried about the fact that a bunch of dangerous lunatics are armed to the nines now, thanks to the Americans quickly pulling out of there. That's my point, but still.
Did you see that Biden wouldn't take one question at the press conference? Not one. Oh, then he has a list, and if he does take questions, he only has his favored people. In other words, the people who thought he was so marvelous. Well, you got what you wished for, and now you got him in charge. Good luck with that. He'll never last 4 years. Bet you anything I bet you the best lunch in London. He'll never last 4 years. Veronica Curran, the idea it's all in their hands. It is, yeah. $85 billion worth of equipment, all in their hands. And it has no oil. You're absolutely right, Ramsey, but it does have fabulous poppy roots and the heroin roots. You want to destroy the West? Make them drug addicts. And Alex Lichtenspell, take two, love, still got that for safety. I wonder what will happen, if anything, on 9/11 this year. Oh, yeah, precisely. They want to say, hey, guess who's back? Guess who's back? All of this, I find, makes me in a constant rage. Because we do, as Phil has beautifully encapsulated, feel helpless about it. We feel hopeless about it. We can see it. Look, we're not military strategists, for Christ's sake, but even us, with our little radio programs, right? We can say, who the hell thought it was a good idea to leave $85 billion worth of absolute cutting-edge military hardware? And why don't you just give it to them? If you want to do that, sell it. All of this would come down to money. You know what they're thinking, these idiots? Under Biden, what they're thinking is, I know what we're doing. The Taliban aren't so bad because they only want to run Afghanistan. Who cares, right? Okay, so sod the people, we'll just let them run Afghanistan. But ISIS want a global revolution. Now, ISIS and the Taliban don't get on. Bit of a broigus. So we could use the Taliban to fight ISIS. You can guarantee over the next 12 months, this will be their thinking. It's the thinking of idiots. That's what they tried to do before. It's a complete disaster. Luke Newman, Biden has gone hugely down in my estimation during the last month. His approval ratings and that of the person pulling the strings, Kamala Harris, is down the toilet in America. Down the toilet.
What a dreadful shame they weren't down at a time when it mattered, but let's not dwell on that too much.
Ramsey says, I implore you all to watch the brilliant two-parter by Rory Stewart on the BBC iPlayer on the history of Afghanistan. Very enlightening and informative. By the way, much of that stuff the US left behind has been trashed or is too complicated for them to use.
But it's there, Ramsey. Even if
It's
most of it is too complicated,
Ramsey,
it's there.
Not too bloody complicated. It's not too complicated for Russians or Chinese to come in and explain how it bloody works. Why is it complicated to work a gun? They know how to work a gun. I know how to work a gun. Right? If I know how to work a gun and an automatic rifle, because I know how it works. Load it up, etc. I know exactly how to do it. So what? They did not destroy all those guns. And even if they've destroyed some of the helicopters, they can be cannibalized. Thank you, Russell. They can be cannibalized and made into like one or two helicopters, even if most of them, it's complete nonsense. Andrea Lucas, you see, they've tried that. Andy, you can't.
You say they've tried it, but they haven't really.
Well, they were there for 20 years. What are you going to do? They were there for 20 years and failed comprehensively.
I strongly suspect that the tactics that Andy is referring to would be a little more grand scale than just trying to do things on the ground.
What are you going to do? Nuke them?
Well, frankly, I very much
Please
hope...
don't go there. Please.
No,
please
I very much hope that we're not the receiving end of said nuke. That's all I say. And I do worry that we are. I'm sorry. I know I have absolutely no proof of this, and I don't want to worry, but it's something that's at the back of my mind frequently, is that we have an awful lot of unstable countries around the world who wouldn't think twice about destroying the West.
Of course, they hate us. But we have to love everybody. But they hate us. Look, here's the thing. It's not going to be Russia or China sending in missiles and taking out New York and Los Angeles. That's not going to happen because they know that the retaliation would be huge and ghastly. What it will be is some bunch of raving lunatics and letting off a dirty bomb. And a dirty bomb, if those of you who don't know it, is very compact, size of a small carry-on, like a piece of carry-on luggage. You can even put it in a rucksack. Seriously. And the dirty bomb means that it's deliberately full of radiation. So it's not the blast, which would be bloody unpleasant. Obviously, it's the radiation. So if it goes off in a city, that city becomes uninhabitable for the lifetime of all of the elements in the bomb. We're talking hundreds of years. That's what they can do. And that's not difficult. If Iran is left to do their own thing, they should have dealt with that. Ramsey says, right. I know we got a guest, just one sec. I need an electric car one day, but I won't be forced to get one without a fight. I found, hello. Ooh, an AMG hybrid. That's the tuning division of Mercedes-Benz that has an electric engine that gives it a range of 7 miles on the electric power. It still does 150 miles an hour, 0 to 60, 2.9 seconds. I love it. But it's all pointless, isn't it? I just want a very small car and very comfortable, but very small because I don't go anywhere. Wow. Interesting stuff. So many interesting comments. We got just time to mop up a couple before our lovely guest comes on. Here we go. What have we got here? Ramsey again. Question Western policies that put the families in charge of the Arab dictatorships who sell oil to Western companies. Western policies are to blame. As Russ says constantly, we never learn. No, they never learn. Veronica Curran, the world is madness. We could regenerate farmers' fields and so many regenerate with hemp. It's absolutely right. Absolutely right. If you think hemp is just people in a BMW with blacked out windows and you get high just walking past us by the smell, that's not what hemp's all about. And of course, Oliver Mammon with the ABC of CBD will be back from next Thursday. Okay, how would you feel, before we disappear and get our guests on, how would you feel about having a show dedicated to your experiences of the NHS? And if they're all marvelous, that would be fantastic as well. Please, it's not here to knock it. It's just a reflection. Just want to know, just want to get a little, it's your chance. Luke Newman, I don't understand why people can't be nice to one another. Luke, it's easy. They hate us. They hate us. There's no point. They hate our guts. They hate the fact we exist.
And that's quite an unfortunate position to be in.
They hate that we exist. Our mere existence is an offense to them.
But luckily, someone whose existence is a delight to us is our first
that
guest.
was silky smooth. Let's see. I don't want that to go past. Is an offence to them, Phil. No, it was too good to only do once. I want that segue
I
was
see.
great. So
someone whose existence is a delight to us is our first guest. Now, we're going to talk about the book Man Alive, which has been published by our very first guest. It's basically... well, do you know what? I'm not actually going to say that. Why on earth am I explaining it? No, why am I explaining it when the guest is here?
Dr. Foster, he went to Gloucester. We want him on.
Dr. Jeff Foster, a very warm welcome to Men's Radio. How are you, sir?
Very good, thanks. That was probably the smoothest introduction, nearly, I've ever had.
I like nearly, yes.
Jeff, I like nearly. I like that. You bring him up, and then you sack him down.
Yeah.
Well, fine. So near, yet so...
He's gone. Jeff, welcome to he's like a little will-o'-the-wisp, isn't he? He's like a little will-o'-the-wisp. 1 minute he's there, next minute he's disappeared. Probably the boss has walked in and fired him, which would make me laugh. Linda Day, before anything, Linda, your son's in such trouble. Oh, he's in big trouble. He's upset the boss there. Right, Jeff, hello there. Thank you so much for finding time to join us. Tell us all about yourself.
So I'm a GP in Leamington Spa in Warwickshire. I've done that for about 10, 12 years. Prior to that, I was an A&E doc. And over the last 5 to 6 years, I've developed a specialist interest in men's health, hence the book, because it was an area that we found out isn't particularly well served in medicine at all. So it was finding an area that we realized needed a lot of work doing. And that was the impetus to get moving with it.
First of all, let me just say, I'm sure everybody watching and listening to this around the world thinks, he looks about 20. So what was he in A&E when he was like 8?
I'm 42.
You're like Doogie Howser. That was number one. Number two, you're an absolute hero, because not just to be a doctor, which is wonderful, but to work in A&E. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I know, because we're all so scared when we go to A&E, Jeff. We're all scared. And, because you're there because something horrible's happened, and it's great. So thank you very much. We don't take it lightly. When did you start to realize there was an absence of help for mental health?
Mental or men's?
Men's. Men's.
Oh, men's health. This was, it wasn't by choice. It was more by design, because when I joined my practice at the time, I was the younger male doc, and a lot of guys would come to see me with male health issues, and some of them are pretty straightforward, but others were just getting more and more complicated. And the problem is there isn't really a specialist that you can go to for men. And you think, well, why do you need one? Because everything's crossed over. So you could argue like prostate's urologist or testosterone's endocrinology or something. But the problem is every hospital specialist looks at their own little bit, and they don't look at the person as a whole. And the problem is we were getting bits back from different specialties, and people were getting stuck in the middle going, well, but what about this? And what about this? And so in the end, it seemed prudent just to start doing my own work. So I sat in with some specialists in all the specialties and started to develop my own interest in an area. It's been self-serving, and the more work you do in it, the more you realize you can help guys. And then it expanded outside of our practice and became more of a regional thing. And now we have patients coming to see us all over the UK.
What is the sort of some of the major problems that people are coming to you with?
The three biggest, probably in order. The most common is testosterone deficiency and a lack of testosterone, which is an odd condition, which I'll go into in a minute. The second one, probably erectile dysfunction, sexual dysfunction in guys, because it's something that's really sensitive, very hard for guys to talk about. So you really want to feel that if you have mustered up the courage, that the person you're going to speak to knows about it. And then the third one is probably mental health, which is getting larger and larger amongst men.
I'm going to deal with the third one first, if you don't mind, because that's obviously our raison d'etre. What is your interpretation? I know why we started the station, because it was the suicide statistics, which just I came across and was shocked, and I immediately took some action. But why do you think mental health in men is growing exponentially?
It's a couple of things. So if you look at cases of confirmed depression, they're still higher in women than men, but this is confirmed diagnoses. And when you look at suicide rates, they're higher in men, which still suggests there is this large undercurrent bubbling of mental health issues in guys that are just not being addressed. And the biggest thing we're seeing is that most guys in their 30s, more so 40s and 50s, don't really know where they sit in society anymore. So in the 20th century, certainly 70s, 80s, around that sort of time, there was a much more well demarcated pattern of where a guy should be. You know, generally it was stereotypical: guy goes to work, doesn't talk about his problems, wife stays at home. It was all very well set out, and the pattern of male behavior was much clearer. Then obviously the changes in behavior started to come in, and there's been this enormous move to get guys to talk about their mental health, which is of course great. But whilst it worked for the younger age group, and we're seeing lots and lots of younger people in their 20s, sometimes early 30s, coming with mental health problems, it hasn't really changed the social and psychological thinking of guys who are a bit older, who still fit that narrative of, well, you keep it bottled inside, you don't talk about your emotions, that's weakness, that kind of stuff. So on TV, you've got all these celebrities who are coming on and making TV programs saying, look, this is the loss of my friend, this is a great TV program. And honestly, I don't think they're particularly beneficial for the age groups we should be aiming for. I don't think by seeing a celebrity who's in a privileged position talk about mental health problems with their friends or relatives is going to change the mentality of those people who really need it, who can't identify with that position, who are in maybe their 40s, 50s or 60s, but struggle trying to understand how they can approach that problems for themselves.
This is such a huge thing, and I'm thrilled that we've gone into this particular avenue of conversation, Jeff. Where you see, for example, on the show, we've had Denise Welsh on the show 3 times. And it's a complicated thing. I've got to put this delicately. Denise Welsh was both praised. Now, you know, I've known her for a long time. Her book is excellent, of saying, look, mental health is a real issue. And then you've got other people going, oh, just Piers Morgan at the lead of it, is going, just shut up. You know, this is all this attention-seeking nonsense. And in the middle is the truth. Now, I know Denise, she suffers from serious depression and she can't control it. I thought it was very brave of her and I thought in this instance, Piers was wrong. That's just but where do you stand on that sort of thing? Do you think people are just trying to jump? All right, the elephant in the room is people are jumping on the bandwagon of mental health. Oh, you can't fire me. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm suffering from mental health problems.
I'd sit somewhere in the middle, to be honest. We certainly, from an NHS perspective, in the last 2 years, irrespective of the pandemic, have seen an inordinate increase in access or need for mental health services. And the difficulty we are finding is that the people that do really need it are now being swamped by those who have very poor abilities to manage their own day-to-day anxieties or stresses. The kind of thing that maybe 40, 50 years ago, you might speak to your close family about, you might be part of a social group, religious stuff, churches, anything like that. The social structure is not there the way it was many years ago. And as such, people just don't know how to cope. For example, we get some cases I've had a guy in his early 20s who came in because he's broken up with his girlfriend and therefore feels he's depressed. Now, you could argue from the Piers Morgan side, well, that's not really depression. That's a normal process because you broke up with your girlfriend and you didn't need to see a doctor for that. The downside is, of course, we don't know. And then we get a guy in his 40s or 50s, and it's the first time I've seen him in 10 years. And he says, I'm really struggling. I don't think I can go to work tomorrow. And that's an alarm bell, because this is a guy who's never been to the doc and is now really concerned. So I think we are getting the message out to the wrong people. I think people who are perhaps more comfortable talking about their emotions, people who have been brought up with this, people of the younger age group who don't know where to manage this, are very ready to go to their doctor and say, I want to speak to you, I need help now. And in this 24-hour Tesco culture of medicine where the problem needs to be fixed now, they are approaching the docs. Whereas the ones that really need it, and certainly ones with the higher suicide groups in the 40s and 50s, were not getting to these guys. They're the ones that do need that help.
How do we reach them then?
Yeah, if I knew that, I'd be writing multiple books. But
it's the key question. I mean, I have to ask myself that every day when we're running the stations. How do we reach the people who need that help?
You are right. I think firstly, there's the larger societal, cultural aspect, which we're not going to change particularly easily. And we talk about, we need to change the way mental health attitudes occur for men and all this sort of thing. But, my son's 9 and he's in the rugby group. And when they hurt themselves, we still say phrases like, well, don't cry like a girl and man up and that kind of stuff. So this stuff still bubbles through. And this is endemic. This is the way people still. So we've still got this bubbling line that says you need to be tough as a guy.
You grow up.
They're also saying, but you should talk about your feelings and cry because it's good. So until you change the way culturally we approach men's mental health, it's much tougher. Practical things you can do as a guy is, I honestly wouldn't necessarily suggest going to your doctor is the best thing to do as the first step, which sounds almost counterintuitive, being as the fact I am one. But many guys find it particularly difficult to open up about things that are troubling them. So what we try and say to people is your first step, just find a friend, close relative, family member, somebody that you feel you can talk to, and you don't have to open up much, but maybe just take half an hour, go for a walk, go to do something just between the two of you and take that time. And nothing has to come out of it. You don't have to have some giant cathartic episode. But we do know that if you make little indents, little breakouts, little vents of concern, you can prevent that build-up that causes the disaster that we all know leads to the suicide.
Yeah. You wouldn't know, Jeff, but the reason I came up with the idea of starting men's radios because just purely by chance I had to do a newspaper review at the BBC, and the main story that day, again by chance, pure serendipity, was suicide statistics. 80% men, 20% women. And I thought this was absolutely shocking. Spoke to my business partner. So we already had women's radio, so we started men's radio over a handshake because I felt it was so important. Having an expert like you on is huge to us, and we appreciate it.
Thanks.
NHS, because of the pandemic, we're not going to get into the politics of it. I don't care, but just looking at the facts, is approaching 5 million procedures behind schedule. Okay, so even if you guys work round the clock in shifts, you're never going to shift that backlog. In your opinion, in your experience, do you think mental health now is going to go down on the pecking order because they've got to deal with the cancer and heart and all the other things which are tangible? I'll put it that way.
No, it's because the common misconception is that when you say like we're going to give £10 billion to the NHS, that's all going to be equally sort of moved among areas. But supposing you had a waiting list of 5 years for a hip surgeon, well, it doesn't matter how many mental health patients are there. That hip surgeon can't do mental health. So you're restricted by the number of specialists in that area. At the minute, you haven't got enough GPs and you haven't got enough psychiatrists and you haven't got enough psychologists. So in that sense, it doesn't matter how long the waiting list for surgery is, that the effects of mental health are going to get worse until you can provide better support in terms of primary care and mental health.
You see, Jeff, what worries me, this is a perfect storm. You've got the absolute chaos that COVID has caused. All right. Economically, social, in every single way. We don't need to go that it's been done. It's been done to death. We understand that. Without a doubt, that has propelled and made even greater the need for mental health care because people have found themselves in situations they never imagined they would. The waiting lists beforehand were long. I'm talking about only mental health. I totally get your point, and thank you for explaining it so with great clarity that you're not comparing apples and apples with mental health care and with surgical care. But mental health is also time critical, isn't it?
Very.
It's not something you can just let fester and I'll see you in a year's time or 6 months. It's hopeless.
It's even worse in child psychiatry. And my brother is a child psychiatrist, actually, and they have a waiting list of a year and a half to see a doctor. And when you're 7, what do you do? So I think the argument is, from the public perception, is, well, we just need to make these docs work harder. They need to do more. They need to work longer hours. But of course, there's literally only so many hours you can work. And what's happening, certainly you can see this. You see it more in primary care, actually, because people know, or people think they know what you do as a GP. If you just shout and scream at them long enough, you say you're not working hard enough, you do more, what actually happens is the reverse. And there's been a larger number of people retiring and leaving general practice because of this than actually encouraging people to join. So what people are going to find is, unless you can make the job enjoyable or incentivized or pleasant, then actually the harder you shout, the less you're going to get people wanting to do it. There is a national shortage in child psychiatry. There's a national shortage in psychiatry and general practice. So the only way you can do it is by making it a more appealable job, which means it can't be driven by politics and the Daily Mail, or it has to be something that is worked in a different way. And the way the government's suggesting, or NHS England suggesting we might do it, is perhaps you could fill these roles with people that aren't doctors. Perhaps you could get a nurse practitioner or a paramedic or somebody else who's partly trained to do the job of what was once a doctor, because no doctors want to do it anymore.
That's horrendous. I'm sorry. That's my knee-jerk reaction. If my sink's blocked and I need a plumber, it's not going to work for me if a butcher turns up.
I wouldn't.
It's like, no, I need a plumber.
It's very difficult because the assistant practitioners you have can save your job effectively. If we didn't have nurse practitioners in primary care, I think primary care would have folded 5-10 years ago. The nurse practitioners that are coming in, ANPs, are basically saving us at the minute because we haven't got enough GPs, and they're able to do the job remarkably well. But there's still that limitation that says complex patients need to be seen by somebody that's at a higher level of training, and the same applies in all specialties. But the core principle still sits that unless you make a job palatable, you can scream and shout from a newspaper or government perspective, you're not going to get people to work harder. They're just going to pull back further and say, well, I'm not doing this.
How do we get out? How do we make it palatable? It's I didn't realize we were going to go into this, but it's absolutely fascinating because it's the mental health of the doctors, who guards the guards, as they say in Latin. What is it? Quis custodies, custodian. It's like, if you're not okay, well, sure as hell we're not going to be okay because we need you. You don't need us, but we sure as heck need you.
I think it's certainly changed since, as I say, I qualified in 2004. So in the 16 years since I did it, the way that medicine has changed is so different now that it's not what I understood being a GP was when I started med school. And really, I think the biggest problem comes down to what is the appropriate thing that should go see a doctor. And we don't have the ability to say no. We don't have the ability to say, you don't need to see a doctor for this. It is a open access to everybody, and everybody is equally and should be equally entitled to see their doctor. But the problem with that is, if you have an open-end system that allows everybody infinite access, and it is infinite access, then you can keep putting money into it. It will never meet the needs of this population it wants.
I know you didn't think you were going to answer this, but it's something I would like to explore. It's a theme that myself and Phil, we've discussed many times on the show. No shows at a doctor's surgery buggers up your schedule. Let's be absolutely honest about it. Would it be possible? Finally, we can ask someone who actually does the job rather than two buffoons who don't know what they're talking about. Would it be possible to bring in a system of fines? Now, before you go, no, hear me out. In other words, you leave a deposit on a credit card of, say, £10. Nothing draconian. I'm not talking about £1,000 or anything. 10 quid. You don't turn up, that money's taken off your credit card and goes straight to the NHS. Was something like that help your backlog?
Yes, definitely. If you had to, even if it was £2,
yes,
the effort of putting it on a card and depositing it would reduce the amount of no-shows.
So why is it that two buffoons like me and Phil, who have no medical training whatsoever and are not in charge, why could we come up with that? In fairness, actually, the credit card thing was Phil's. Why can we come up with that? And it's just logical and it's simple. You don't need tons of bureaucrats to administer it. You know, your GP surgery takes the card, finished. That's it. Boom.
No, I agree. The problem is this is a political decision. And you've got to remember that out of principle, the NHS is free at the point of access.
I know.
And people are very, very keen to keep that principle in place. As soon as you create a deposit or you create a system that involves payment of any form, the principle of the NHS is lost, and people will take that as a measure towards privatisation.
Yeah, but it's crap. It's not true, is it? It's not true. People are taking advantage. You want to, if you want to try and make the doctor's life easier and the NHS surgery's life easier, then get rid of the scam artists and get rid of the people who are wasting your time. For a start.
That is a very valid point, and I think we see it even more so in secondary care, where we get multiple letters from consultants saying patient didn't show for their appointment. They're discharged, they come back to us and say, I want a re-referral, and the whole process goes through again. Incredibly frustrating. But you're right, we have limited ability, and unfortunately, even though you might be a partner in a practice, you can't change the political structure of the NHS independently.
Here's the thing, Jeff, and I'd love your take on this. Okay, I was called in by the Department of Health some years ago as a consultant for their communications. I went in for 3 weeks, stayed 52 weeks because there was so much to be done. And in all my research, and I was writing a lot of stuff, some of which went to parliamentary private committee hearings and all sorts of stuff, was this. The NHS was 1949, was it? But an iron bearing, a brilliant and wonderful idea, 1949, to give back to an entire generation that had lost everything in World War II. By 1951, they realized financially it was completely unsustainable. I mean, I've read all the paperwork. I saw all the papers. They knew by 1951 this beautiful idea, a wonderful idea, financially couldn't be sustained. But as you say, it's enshrined in the sort of mental DNA of the United Kingdom that we have to have it. That's been a fundamental flaw.
Yes and no, but if you come from a country like America, for example, you come to the UK, and supposing you are admitted, your gallstones are playing up and you have to have a procedure, that's not going to mean you have to remortgage your house, whereas it will effectively in the States without health insurance mean you could be lumbered with 40, 50,000's worth of bills. In the UK, this is free. And for the people that need it, and for people with complex illnesses, people that can't support, the NHS is an amazing concept, because for many millions of people, it's allowed them to live effectively a normal life.
Okay, but there is a key. It's a wonderful thing. Please don't think I'm being critical. I'm not. I'm just saying at the heart of it, there is a huge financial flaw. Richard Vero, who's watching from Germany, says, Jeff, I think you have to say Dr. Jeff, that'd be more polite. Dr. Jeff, I live in Germany where I can walk down to my doctor's when he's open and get seen within the hour without an appointment. Why is it so different? I didn't know that. It's a good question.
You can do the same in the UK if you wish to pay privately. But, for example, so we have 16,500 patients in our 8-doctor practice.
God.
The average number of calls per day that I will take individually, 35, 40 maybe. I'll see maybe 8 or 10 of them face to face. I will have 100 pathology results, 70 or 80 letters. And that's a normal sort of 8 till 6 day. So the difficulty you've got is that the demand is just so unbelievably large that you can't offer that service anymore. And it's just overwhelming.
Jeff, on a personal level, if you don't mind, you tell me about my own business. It's not the BBC. You know, you're not an interrogation. It's a conversation. How do you cope? How do you cope? How do you cope with this?
It's certainly getting harder.
Yeah.
It was easier when it was a few years ago before I became a partner. But I do 3 full days NHS, and I try and have one day where I finish a bit earlier on a Tuesday. I do some work like this, where I do books or writing or something, just to try and break away. I think the number of full-time docs is having to reduce because the burnout rate is becoming so large. Certainly, most docs are now able to access support for doctors, which wasn't even there 10 years ago, but they will need it because it's becoming so stressful.
This is so scary. I find it scary because people go, we all think, somebody like myself, doctors are God because they do brilliant stuff and we're pretty silly. And what we do isn't life-changing and life-saving. What you do is, but we always forget that you're human beings, and like everybody else, are subject to burnout and huge mental stress, etc. You're not superhuman. And so it's kind of built on quite a delicate foundation. It doesn't feel like it's built on a really solid, granite foundation. It could kind of fall. That's always so frightening, I think.
Yeah, I think we're starting to get closer to that tipping point soon. If one was cynical, you could argue that it's by design rather than coincidence, but I don't know. It's very difficult. But then again, that goes back to
I can't let that slide. I can't let that slide. So you're saying what they want to do. I'm going to put words in your mouth, see if I'm right with what you're thinking. What they, whoever they might be, want to do is make it so the NHS can't work and they privatize it. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes and no, because the problem is, even if you privatize it, you haven't got any more doctors. So again, this goes back to supply.
Precisely.
Even if you made it private, who's going to do it? The only difference I can see is that you could charge for a service and then suddenly demand will go down because, of course, if you haven't paid 50 quid just to enter your deposit, then suddenly you're not going to see a doctor anyway. So I don't really believe that the idea of privatization is somehow going to save the health service unless you created more doctors.
Well, that's the key of it, isn't it? It's
a
combination.
If you made the job more palatable and more enjoyable and stopped smashing GPs all the time, then people would want to do the job. But even 3 months ago, I had 2 students in with me who said they weren't going to do general practice because they just hated the fact that media keep having a go at them all the time. And that's really sad because they haven't even started their junior house job yet.
Let me ask you this: under the smoke screen of the COVID, a lot of NH practices, including my local one, which is brilliant, around the corner, it's wonderful, shut the doors, and unless your leg had just dropped off in the street, you were screwed. You couldn't actually access anybody. How do you feel about some people who think, you know what, they're not going to open fully again?
Oh, I don't know if they will open fully again, but it's nothing to do with workload. It's to do with ability to screen. So previously, if you imagine prior to the pandemic, the lowest common denominator in many practices was the receptionist who would simply say, do you want an appointment? Yes, no. Fill them up. Appointments are done.
Yeah.
The demand for primary care has gone up another 30% since the pandemic.
30?
Yeah, well, it's 130 total, but it's unbelievable. So the problem is, with the reduction of doctors and the demand increase, you can't, because then the problem is, so for example, just prior to the pandemic, when you were an on-call doc, so you might just do half a day, I might have 50 phone calls in an afternoon. Most of those would not be seen because you can't see 50 patients in 5 hours. But now what's happened is they've switched it, and they've said, actually, if you telephone patients first and say, do you need to be seen or not, you can decide as the doctor who decides needs to be seen or not. So the idea is they're trying to create a way that will decrease the workload in the NHS group. The problem is, of course, if you're a patient and you're saying, well, hang on, I used to be able to just go in, now I've got to be spoken to, and I may not be seen at all. It creates this feeling of, well, they're not working. But actually, it's the opposite. I find it infinitely harder now, because before you could just sit in your room, 20 patients would walk in and you'd go have a coffee. Great. Now, 40, 50 phone calls down the line, you then have to see them at your own time, and you've got to work out, well, who do I see? Where do I do that? It's infinitely more pressured.
But some will slip through the net. It's inevitable, isn't it?
Unfortunately, some slipped through the net when it was face-to-face, and that was the big problem. So previously, if you shouted loudest, you would be seen. So those patients that knew the game, they could ring up, they could get in early, they were guaranteed, and you would see the same faces week after week. The pleasant old lady, for example, who was just too polite, might miss those days of appointments, and she'd ring up, oh, it's full today. Oh, it's fine. So she wouldn't ring up. Or the cancer patient that maybe you needed to spend half an hour with because they had some really complex stuff. They only had their 9-minute slot because they had other patients you have to see after that, and you can't keep patients waiting. So now you have the ability to choose who you see. And I sympathize from a patient perspective, because you feel the system is unfair because I can't have that straight access that I had before. But it goes back to my original point that unless you can create a system that allows more patient interactions with clinicians, doctors ideally, then this isn't going to get better.
This is what I was hoping you wouldn't say, but I knew that you probably would. This is exactly what I've been thinking for ages. Let's go back to your book. It's a fascinating conversation. It's also pretty depressing. You know, it's a dark conversation, because I keep thinking I must have been, when Phil's around, you know, we keep thinking, no, we're daft. So we must have misunderstood. And I don't think, unfortunately, I really wanted to be wrong. And I don't think we've misunderstood at all. I don't think we've misunderstood in the least, that this really is just, you know, the perfect storm is brewing here. The book. Tell us more. Tell us, first of all, where can we get it?
So it's available on Amazon. It's probably the easiest place to find it. You just type in Man Alive, and it's the book. Here we go. That's my book.
Yes, no, hold it up to your camera. That's great. Oh, there we go. Fantastic.
Man Alive, the health problems that men face and how to fix them. And part of this was actually written about the idea of preventative medicine, going back to your original point, and that a lot of guys find it difficult to know when to see a doctor, what they can do to look after themselves. Do I need to worry about stuff as I get older? So the idea is if you could write something that said, look, these are the things you need to think about from the age of 30 and onwards, and these are the things I can do to try and prevent health problems rather than just being reactive, to try and be proactive, then this was a good way of reaching out. And after doing a lot of talks locally and speaking to junior doctors and trying to do some training stuff, we thought actually maybe we can get a wider audience just by writing the book.
Now, I know this is not necessarily the reason.
Phil.
How nice of you to pop in. I know.
Lunch.
I know full well this is not necessarily sort of the most important aspect of the book, but I have to say that cover is absolutely ingenious.
Oh, with the thing that isn't a flat line. I like that a lot.
It's an ECG. It's a heartbeat.
Yeah,
it's absolutely ingenious. Love it. I got the reference. I just loved it. I thought it was very good.
Tell me something.
Sorry.
Dr. Foster, what would be your 2 top tips? You can do 3, you're a genius, but 2 top tips for preempting problems, sort of looking after ourselves.
First one is at some stage in your 40s, ideally, but whenever you can, get a health check. And I don't mean NHS health check, which is great, but very, very limited. But spend a bit of time, do a bit of research, and get a proper health check somewhere. It's probably going to cost you £700-800, but it's worth doing, because then you have a benchmark of knowing what are my risks for certain things.
Okay.
If you do that, you can start to get an idea of things you might need to look after yourself for in the future. Do I have an increased risk of cholesterol? Do I have an increased risk of prostate problems or diabetes or whatever else? Because if you can do it well, if I do my job well and I catch this problem now and I treat your blood pressure and your cholesterol, you don't ever have to see that cardiologist with your heart attack when you're 60, because we do the job ourselves. The other thing is lifestyle stuff now. Lifestyle and measures to stay healthy are the biggest thing you can do as a guy. So you can't stop getting older. You can't stop being a bloke. Well, I suppose you can, but that's major lifestyle change.
Go down that rabbit hole.
That's hard. Yeah, I mean, that's hard work. So maybe not those two. But then you've got controllable or reversible risk factors that you can control. So things like what you eat, what your diet is, how much you exercise, what's your sleep quality, and even at a basic level, things like self-reflection. So how many guys at some point in their day for 40 minutes or so will spend time where they don't look at their phone and they just contemplate and think about the processes of things they're doing? Very few people are able to do that. But that time of self-reflection, thinking about issues, are enormously beneficial for mental health and being able to stave off things like burnout, especially in my job.
Precisely. Well, thank you so much for finding time for us. I mean, I don't even know how the hell you found time to write a book. It's amazing, really.
I did it in the evenings. In fact, that was awful. When we published it, one person on Twitter wrote, "Well, clearly you weren't seeing patients. You were sitting home writing a book." Right. So we said, actually, no, I started it at 10 p.m. every night after my kids are in bed. And I did an hour a night for a year and a bit. He didn't reply, but I asked him if he wanted to buy a copy.
What a surprise. A brave little troll hiding up in his mum's spare bedroom. Twerp.
I think the whole concept of the book really was just that if you are a guy in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, and you're thinking, I want to do something to try and make myself as healthy as I can, to try and avoid seeing me, this is what the book was designed to do. And hopefully it educates and it informs some guys out there just to stay a little bit healthy, and then you feel you've done a bit of a good thing for the group.
Well, if I had to say a doctor, I would hope it was you, because you got your finger on the pulse. No pun intended. I just meant that as a phrase. No, I didn't mean that as a sort of stethoscope thing. Anyway, listen, Jeff Foster, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Good luck with the book. Marvelous idea. Hope it all goes really well. And thank you for your time, because you are busier than God.
Well, no.
Yeah, no, you are. You are. No, God's on holiday. All right.
Farewell.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Goodness. Well,
cheerio. I got places
I was going to say. I mean, I don't think he gets any.
I got places to go.
No, he's actually gone. Okay, well, fine. Never mind. Easy come, easy go, I suppose. Well, do you know what that was, don't you? I think this is what you call payback. Because I decided to abandon him, just that I give him a bit of one-on-one time with Dr. Jeff Foster, because there are some interviews that we get lined up, which I have to tell you, I think I know would work so much better if we didn't try and tackle the joys of the internet, where we're fighting over each other, trying to get a word in edgeways. And of course, the poor guest is looking mildly horrified at that. Do these two know that they're on together and that they're supposed to talk together? But anyway, the point is that there are some interesting comments that have come through off the back of Dr. Jeff's time. So we've got Veronica says that it needs way more discussion. It needs, I think it should be it, not in. It needs way more discussion for men. Definitely feel the conversation is in our hands. Proper chats in friendship groups. We need to just ask really how you feel. Oh, how nice of you. Hello. Right, there you go.
Do you know what?
If nothing comes of it, that allows the thought that may send a friend help. I think what Veronica is actually saying, that if it's down to us to feel that we can converse more and actually encourage people to converse more, which is absolutely essential. It's so important, which is precisely why men's radio even exists.
My whole system just failed. I went off to get a banana because I was feeling faint. And the whole system failed. I had to completely reboot it. There you go.
Well, there you go. Here was me thinking that was payback.
No, not at all.
Well, if you do
how
need
many
to
comments
take
have you
5,
read?
then do so.
How many comments have you read?
What do we have? We've read Veronica's one, but haven't read any others. So
there's tons of really great comments coming in from everybody. So I think we should acknowledge them. By the way, Dr. Foster, we record number of viewers for that. We'll come on to you in a minute, Mr. Sleet.
An impressive, I don't know about record number, but impressive number. Paul Claridge says, I have a couple of friends who are counsellors within the NHS. Their workloads are off the scale and they are struggling to cope, but they carry on because they know that their patients need them. Now, I'm sorry, but this is an awful lot. This is what I was thinking as I was listening to you having a chat with Dr. Jeff there just now, is that there is almost too much encouraging people to go to the doctors, if you think about it, because think very carefully about an awful lot of the conditions out there that are understandably quite rightly time sensitive. And it's essential, absolutely essential, that those conditions get caught early because they're more treatable. And you know what we're talking about. However, I don't think anyone has thought of the consequences of saying to people openly and persistently, go to the doctor, get it checked, go early, better be safe than sorry, keep going. And unfortunately, what that's doing is I feel that is playing a massive part in driving up the number of people who try and get GP appointments. Mix that with a booming population. Mix that with, I know we don't get it so much at the moment because, well, I suppose many people can come to the country now, but they couldn't over the last year or so. But mixed with a combination of an increase in population in other aspects as well, so increased coming to the UK without necessarily the infrastructure in place to deal with said numbers. All of these factors play a massive part in it, and yet they've never thought about that.
You're not allowed to say that.
Well, I just have. You're not allowed to say it.
You see what I'm saying? We're in a situation, because if you start down this road, you're immediately labelled, a fascist, or you're a xenophobe, or you're a little Englander. Here's the thing. No, Phil, here's my argument. Because I'm actually on your side. If you've got a pint jug, you can put a pint of water in it. If you've got a pint jug, you can't put a pint and a half of water in it. It doesn't have the capacity. If you've got a pint jug, you can't put 7 pints in it. What you're going to do is soak your kitchen. So, there are the rules of stuff which is finite. Not everything in the world is infinite. It's simply not. Dr. Foster there spoke so eloquently and so clearly. This is a system. This is a rewind. This is a really dedicated, skilled man. Dedicated to his profession. And what I got from that conversation, apart from the fact that he's a great guy, and a guy I would be thrilled if he was my doctor. I'd feel really confident if he was my doctor, because I never know who the hell my doctor's going to be. Not that they're not nice, but I don't know who I'm going to see. There's no consistency. But this is a system absolutely held together with staples and a bit of sticky tape and some blue tack. I mean, this is as close to collapse. And this isn't being Daily Mail. This is, you're listening to what he's saying there. The statistics he was giving, the number of people he had to deal with on a daily basis, and that's now. Hence my pint container analogy.
And might I also suggest as well, the other thing that was worth considering is that as more discussions like this come about, where we openly encourage people to talk about mental health and to get their mental health dealt with.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily realize the resources there are out there. So even if we're the kind of people who would say, well, actually, no, you don't necessarily need to go to your GP. You need to go to this, that, and the other person. Then great, then we're of some use. But a lot of people would automatically, intuitively think to themselves, I'm going to go to my GP about this.
Why else would they know? Which is why there's a whole new notion, and I would love to be part of it. I want our organization to be part of it, called signposting. You've got a problem. The longest journey starts with the first step, as Mao Zedong said. Was it Chiang Kai-shek? I can't remember. Here's the thing. If you're suddenly, it's overwhelming. And as you've said, Phil, you've identified, you don't know where to start. You're faced with an issue. You don't know where the hell to look. Where do you start? And let's get over this. Oh, well, it's all on the internet. No, not everything's on the bloody internet. You want the right information, not a load of nonsense. You want the right information. So signposting is so, so important, which is my dream, where I want to be able to take this whole enterprise, which we've undertaken here.
Do you know, that's another thought I've just realized. This has never crossed my mind before.
What?
The internet, how much has that got to play in a part of overwhelming the NHS?
Well, of course it has, because
it's because people look up symptoms
and you're going to die. You're going to die.
They imagine what they've got, and as a result of it, they go straight to their GP, understandably worried by what they have misread.
I'm not even going to say that they've misread. There's a lot of utter shit on the internet. It's complete psychobabble. When I say misread, what I mean is they've looked up symptoms, and they've looked up symptoms that could apply to a great number of conditions. Yeah, and as a result of it, and it never says don't worry. And the thing is, Phil, when you've got an illness and they're I looked it up on the internet. Don't. Jesus, go and talk to it, because it never says, hey, don't worry about it. It's fine. It'll clear up in a day or two. It always says, well, you know, your leg's going to drop off, and then followed by your head. You've got about 3 hours to live. It always says that on the internet. It's always terrible. Dave Sleep, people would talk when they trust, understand, and believe that they will be listened to. What scares the hell out of me is when you realize the sort of pressures that Dr. Foster from Gloss was under, and you think, how long before, and he's a young guy, he looked fit and everything like that, how long before people just burn out? It's
well, by the sound of it, not long at all.
No, it's scary.
And this is what, you know, this goes back to the earlier conversation we were having about people sweating the small stuff. This is what we should be getting worked up about. This is what we should be worrying about. This is what we should be trying to tackle. Not whether or not someone is offended who is a bloke who happens to be called he or him. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Okay? Because although I'm fully aware that there's a lunatic fringe out there that is most certainly offended by stuff that ought not to be offensive and was never designed to be offensive. But whilst we're so busy worrying about that, look around us. Those who are pivotal to our mere existence are disintegrating before us, and no one's doing anything about it.
Of course they're not. Of course they're not. How did we get to this stage? And it goes straight to our mental health. How did we get to the stage where people, some of whom, and I'm just going to say, are clearly deranged. I think they're mentally ill, some of these people. I think they're seriously psychologically, for whatever reason, damaged, control the narrative. How did we get to this? And not just say, you need help, let's help you, but stop this nonsense.
And that's the problem, is that actually there is nothing wrong with saying to somebody who maybe does come across, to those who have, might I suggest, a more mainstream train of thought, that there is clearly something not right and that they need help. But for some ridiculous reason, we've now almost become too afraid to say that.
We are afraid.
And that doesn't make sense either.
We are afraid to say it. We're afraid to say it because you will get pilloried, castigated, and your career will be over. It goes into
but there's nothing wrong with actually wanting to help with comedy.
It goes into, and even you and I, who push the boundaries a lot, deliberately so, not by accident. Because we live in the real world, because we've got a proper grown-up audience who, if they don't agree, won't go off in a sulk. They'll talk about it, and then we'll discuss it like grown-ups do. It's just childish. You go onto Twitter sometimes. Christ, I go in and I rush out as quickly as I can. Right, what do we got here? We've got, this is good from, this is important. Where can we train as mental health counsellors? I'm at an age where I'd be happy to help. Well, you could certainly speak to the local council, Ramsey, and become what they call a signposter and start there. Definitely. Chris Richards, I think people who don't keep their appointments should be charged. Some people abuse doctors. Damn right. I never went unless essential, and I don't here in Spain. That's the proper thing to do. It's the proper thing to do. Do you know what it all comes down to, Phil? And this is the answer to so much. It's just common sense. Common sense.
But the problem is what
dead.
I really worry. This is what I worry about.
Dead.
I don't think common sense is being heard anymore. And with that in mind, does that sort of make it uncommon sense? Because technically speaking,
it's a long piece. I know.
If the masses, I've disappeared. If technically, if the masses are not necessarily following suit, well, then technically it's not common sense, is it?
But it's been allowed to happen, and I want to know
for sure.
how
That's the worst
I want
thing.
to know how it's been allowed to happen, and in such a short space of time.
There's very little doubt in my mind. It is not a coincidence that since in the last, let's say, 50 years of this country, and I wasn't even around for some of that, but let's say in the last 50 years, where a great deal of what might be known as discipline and common decency has been allowed to just be ebbed and eroded away in this country, we now have anarchy. And anarchy doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of physical violence. It can come in the sense of verbal nonsense, for want of a better word. Because whereas in years gone by, someone might have actually thought twice before speaking about something, now they don't. They don't think twice. They just say what they feel with no rationale behind it whatsoever, in the hope that it catches on. And sadly, because most people are stupid, it does catch on.
Whoa. No, most people are not stupid.
Oh, come on. There is an awful lot of stupid.
Do you really
I openly admit
most people are stupid. Are you saying that most of our audience, most of our audience around the world, are you saying they're stupid?
I'd include myself in it. Most people in this world are stupid. We don't have information that is necessary to make informed
that's a very arrogant
decisions.
Thing to say, Phil.
No, it's not.
I
include myself. It's not arrogant. I'm including myself in it. I am not informed enough to make decisions on many different subjects. I still have an opinion on those subjects, but I'm not clever enough to have those opinions.
Well,
I just still have them.
Yourself. You got an opinion. You're not clever enough to have that opinion, but you've still got the opinion. How does that work?
What do you mean?
You just said you're not clever enough to have an opinion.
Correct.
But I've still got an opinion.
Yes. And that's the world in which we live in. People form opinions on something, on a subject, on a topic, whatever it might be, thinking that they are some sort of expert on it, when realistically they do not know the facts behind those subjects, and subsequently they come up with nonsense.
Do you know why we have mental health issues and we despair? Because we used to be able to put our trust in the people who were. We had state, we had church, we had a royal family, whether you like it or not. There were things that seemed to be solid. When each of those pillars of those sort of foundations are just eroded away and shown to be either useless or pointless or not fit for purpose, you got a real problem on your hands, which has allowed people who are ridiculous, following that adage that empty vessels make the most noise, the people who suddenly opinion is suddenly so important when they've got no experience, don't know what they're talking about, and basically often talking absolute gibberish, have controlled the narrative of our world.
And it's worse, is they're given a platform.
Well,
And this is the problem. This is precisely where my argument comes
from. They're given a platform, Phil, under the wonderful, huge umbrella of it's free speech. Now, you only have to look at some. I don't watch news shows. The reason I don't watch news shows is because they always get Rent-A-Gob on, who's there to push their agenda, whatever this week's bullshit agenda happens to be. And they're given equal time to someone who studied a subject for many, many years and actually knows what they're doing. I would put, I'm just stunned. I was driving past, there was an anti-vaxxer rally in Trafalgar Square several weeks ago. And the speaker, I could see on the huge screen, is this nurse. Now, this nurse, this well-known, I'm not even going to name her. I'm not going to give her the airtime. I'm not going to give her the oxygen of publicity. Was taken out of the NHS. She was basically fired. Now, I wouldn't listen to a word this person said. Because you've got to go some to be fired because they just have major concerns about you and your ability and the things that you say. And that's coming from the medical council. That's not coming from politics. It's no one in Whitehall saying, get rid of this person. This is coming from her own medical body.
Sue Sleet says, education has been dumbed down in such a way people are no longer able to research proper information, relaying on the internet to form their opinions, leaving Rent-A-Mob in the ascendancy. But actually, do you know what? I'd actually sort of think it goes one step further. It's because it's not even so much about researching anymore, because people can just research whatever the heck they want, really. They just look online, but they find what they want to find. Well, and that's what I'm talking about.
Of course they do. They're filtering it through their own.
In years gone, but we're not capable as a species. The majority of people are not capable of processing vast quantities of information.
No, they're not, but they think they are. I get that. But we don't want to dumb everything down. Luke, I totally disagree with you here. People with no knowledge with a voice. Donald Trump comes in mind. Let me tell you something, Luke. That's extremely rude to all the millions and millions and millions of Americans who voted for him. Millions and millions and millions millions of people who voted for him.
Yes, but you don't think that those millions and millions of people made an informed decision when they voted for him, do you?
Well, of course they bloody did. They did. Why do you say that? Why are you now saying that everybody in America who voted for Trump, I'd like to say the people who voted for Biden were careful. Look what you got. Well done.
I don't think they do either. That's what I'm saying. Many people don't. There is too much information out there for people to process and to actually get a grip on and understand what it is the heck that they're either reading, talking about, or listening to. And I include myself in that. And what really irritates me more than anything else, is, for example, the subject of the Middle East, is when people start having an opinion on that. I actually take a real vested interest in Middle Eastern politics and read a lot about it from all different sources, whether people believe that or not, but I do. And I still don't think I understand anywhere near enough the level.
It's incredibly complicated.
Exactly. And that is my point, is that so much of life is incredibly complicated, but unfortunately, people take it upon themselves to form an opinion on something based on having little or no knowledge, because they are not capable, and again, I include myself in this, not capable of absorbing the amount of information required to make an informed opinion on a particular subject matter.
Philip, it boils down to this. And I agree with you. Ramsey, I so agree with you. You couldn't agree with you more. I think it's nice. Well, anyway, it boils down to this. X factor. Bear with me. We're not allowed to have the opinion that some things in life are complicated. Some things are really difficult. They require careful thought, careful thinking, careful debate, careful study, careful research. Everything is not a soundbite. I mean, one of the tenets that I wanted for MRS. I didn't want, hey, feeling depressed. Here's Dr. Phil Dave to talk about it. Phil Dave gets 3 minutes.
God
there
forbid
you
that.
go. No, don't make light of what I'm saying. Well, they drag on some Herbert, right? Their key person. They give him 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and that's the end of that. How do you stop being depressed? Hey, time for summer fashions after the break. You can't do this, which is why all of our guests get about 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes if necessary. And then we only don't even touch the sides with it. Some things are very, very complicated. But we live in a world that everything seems to be reduced to a soundbite and the salient facts put over like it's an advert for car insurance or some crap. This is the problem. This is the problem. You can't keep pandering to the lowest denominator. You just can't.
Well, I tell you what, someone who may very well be able to bring out the best in us is our next guest.
I love your links.
Thank you.
They're both tenuous and clever at the same time.
It's a skill, I have to tell you.
It is a skill. I don't,
He goes by the name of Euron Engler. He's an educator, a coach. Oh, and it even says here a husband and a father as well. And get this, RK.
What?
Far too clever for this program.
Yeah,
a
what's he doing here?
world-class musician.
I'll be the judge of that.
I see. Euron, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to Men's Radio.
Good to be here with the two of you. And did I say on my own bio that it's a world-class musician? My goodness, I should say.
Euron. All right, I'm going to start off as I mean to go on here, Mr. Euron, with your good looks and your groovy hair. Listen to this. If you're a world-class musician, if you can do the drum intro to Hot for Teacher by Van Halen, I will agree with you.
I don't even know what it is. I'm failing
there
already.
You go. You're
the
falling at the first
Yeah. All right, guys, it's been great. Thanks for the interview. Sorry.
Thanks a lot. We've loved seeing you, and it's been terrific. What a great guest he was.
Yeah.
I tell you why I say it. I tell you why I say it in case you think it's a completely random thing. All during the whole of blooming lockdown, right? I've been watching all these drum things. I love drumming. And there's a particular drum intro, and I am 18 months in, no closer to even getting the first section organized. I just can't
give up now already, man. For 18 months and you're closer.
It's the most
Do you think
complicated
that's life's way?
You know what, Phil? It's the most complicated thing I have ever encountered. Right, that's enough of that. Euron, thank you so much. Welcome to the show. Thank you on behalf of everybody else. And terrific. Tell us about yourself, please.
Phil already said everything. I'm a father. I'm a husband.
Okay.
I'm a musician. That's
you
it.
any good at those? Before we get on to the other side, you any good? Any good as a father and a husband? Any good at all?
I'm doing my best.
You're doing okay. Alex, we can see you. We can see. Are we supposed to be able to see Euron? Well, there he is. We can see him.
Yeah, right. Well, in that case, you know what? There's one way around that. There you go.
There we are. That's even better. Much better.
We'd
much rather look at
what you wish
for,
Alex.
We'd much rather look at you than look at us.
Do I have to see myself that big on the screen?
Well, you do. I'm
Yes, I see
sorry.
you too.
It's lucky. And then we're going to blow it up and put it on Piccadilly Circus. So it's really, really huge. We used to do that. All right. So you're a father. Okay. You're a husband. Okay. I think we can move on from that. And what else?
I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a man. Yeah. I work with men. I had a transition. So yes, I was a musician in the past. That's what, from the age of 4, as far as I remember myself, drumming was the biggest dream I've ever had. If you have any big dream, any big aspiration, multiply that by 7,014. That was what drumming was for me. And back then, there was no TV or stuff. So drum was really unachievable thing, but I was very committed. And somehow I was able to achieve, to make a career out of that, which led me to a lot of beautiful places. So I toured all over the world, which was an amazing experience. But at some point after doing all that, and when I became a father, it was kind of like, do I really want to continue with this route? I worked mainly with dance companies, and mainly back then with Russ Phil, who is a well-known choreographer, an amazing guy to work with. And I knew that the next piece with him will not include musicians, and it was a point for me to understand: do I want to now go and do weddings and become like a drummer of gigs and stuff. And I really wasn't interested. So I kind of analyzed what is it that I want to do. And what I discovered that from all my career and all this fancy schmancy stuff that I did, the thing that I really treasured was moments that I had with students or moments that I had in shows that I was more than just a drummer, but I came out and I had some acting and things that more interactive with people. I loved opening people's minds through this work that I've done. So then I started to investigate, what can I do with that? And then I discovered, as I always say, the world of coaching, which is it has a lot of good, bad, and shitloads of ugly in it. So I had to swim through that and find my own way through that world. And in 2015, I discovered this work that is called men's work. And I started to get involved with that, and the impact it had on me. The first weekend that I was involved with as a participant in a men's only weekend, I felt so amazing after that and during that experience that since then I became fully committed to this work. And now I'm facilitating it, and I continue to grow this because I believe that it definitely made my life better, and I believe it will make a lot of men's people's lives better, and I truly believe that it will make the world a better place. So that's what I do.
Before we get into that, and I want to delve deep into that, who are your top 3 drummers? I'm sorry, I got to ask.
Oh, that's a tough question. Okay, I'll answer you.
Come on. Well, give me top 5 drummers then. Your personal
one. No. I'll just say the first one that comes in mind, because I think I'm not into drummers. I'm into guys that are real musicians. Brian Blade is an amazing musician. He's the guy that, if you don't know who he is, he's the guy that plays on the famous Nora Jones, Don't Know Why I'm whatever the names of the song. Mm-hmm. Plus, he will play the craziest jazz stuff, and Johnny Mitchell. So he's very versatile, and he sings also, and he composes, and he plays guitar. An amazing drummer. Saw him live also. He's really dancing with the drums. Amazing guy. Steve Gadd, Russell, which you probably know as well, and is an amazing drummer. Yep. And there's so many. It depends on the mood. Manu Katcher was a big influence. Neil Peart was a big influence.
Joe Morello. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Right. Alexander Lichfeld's getting upset. Sorry, Alex, not your show.
No, I can't understand why, I'm sure. Euron, I can't help but wonder that sort of with this notion of the coaching and sort of the men's workshops, for want of a better term, where did this idea stem from? Because is it something that's because correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing by your accent that you stem from Israel, if I'm not mistaken.
Some of us has this responsibility, yes.
Yeah, but as we all know, Israel is world-class leader when it comes to medical treatments and pioneering treatments at that. And is that something that sort of takes place there a lot, or is this something you discovered here, or where does it come from?
It happens everywhere, and unfortunately, the way I see it, it's kind of an underground thing that is a weird thing, a kind of culty thing or therapeutic thing, and I think it's time to break the stigma around what the men's group is. The way I was introduced to it was in my path on the coaching journey, I heard a coach who is Rich Lidven, who is quite a well-known coach, talking about his men's group. But the way he spoke about it, it wasn't a place to just share and open up as men, which we all really need to do. It was more about, we are opening and we are sharing, but we're kicking the ass of each other to become better men. So I want to grow my business. I want to grow my awareness. I want to do better for myself, for my family, for the world. And I really like this idea of openness that doesn't come from the macho man of like, come on. It was more from a loving, open space. And that really made me curious. And then I met in one of he's based in LA, but he came to London and he did a workshop, and he kept talking about it. And then I spoke to John Wineland, who was there, who was part of his men's group. And John said that he would come to London to do a workshop. And I decided to join that workshop that weekend. And from not knowing exactly what to expect, I finished that weekend stretched in all levels. Like I felt that I connected with men that I would probably never speak to if I just meet them somewhere on such a deep, beautiful level. It was such an amazing connection where I learned so much about myself, about my strengths and what I'm good at, about things that I have, all the judgments that I carry and all the dark things that I need to learn how to let go of. And it was just an amazing experience. And that was my route. But there are tons of organizations that do this. You know, the biggest one is the Mankind Project. There is a Band of Brothers here in the UK, which are doing beautiful work, and many, many others. So yeah, it's out there.
Have we, as by the way, 50% of the audience on this platform are women, which is fantastic. I wasn't expecting that when we started it, but it's brilliant. Do you think we've lost our way because we don't know what a man is anymore?
That's a great way to put this question. I think I don't think we have good enough reference of what it is like of good male role models. At least I didn't have. I don't want to speak for everyone because it would be ridiculous. But at least where I come from, being a man was about being aggressive, was about being pushy, was about getting into your way, which never really suited what I felt inside. And for me, through my journey to discover that actually my strength is through being more vulnerable, being more honest and open, understanding that all this aggression that comes from so many people, especially men, comes from a wounded place and not from actually aggressive, to really work hard, and it's still a challenge to understand that every offense that I receive from anyone, man or woman, is actually a form of defense. It's just something that people try to protect, and it's hard. It's a hard one.
You've hit the flipping nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, and that's exactly the problem, is that sort of when you have someone who is, as you say, quite aggressive, more often than not, it stems from such dreadful insecurities that they are so not confident in themselves that they have no other means or no other ways of tackling a situation than just, frankly, pushing people away with aggression. Amazing. So true.
It's interesting because I'm a bloke, last time I checked.
Are you?
I've never felt the need. It's under some debate. I've never felt the need to be aggressive. I've never been an aggressive person, and I've never felt the need to be pushy.
Great.
And those are just two adjectives that anyone who knows me at all will know. I may be many bad things, but those are not two of them. I've never felt a confusion about that. It's just I thought being strong in a good way. I didn't see that as a negative thing. You know, I didn't see that being protective in a good way, you know.
And was it for you, what was your challenge with the definition of your question of, did we lose our way? Do you feel that we lost our way as men?
I think there is an agenda in the media and politically to make it even more difficult to be a bloke. I don't think we should all be walking around feeling guilty that we're a man.
Absolutely,
we are a man. There's nothing we're a man. There's nothing we can do about it. That's how it is. I can't feel guilty about that.
In some way, it almost feels like there's a bit of payback going on for so many wrong years of treating women badly. That's the only way I could describe it. But it's not necessarily coming from women, this payback, if you see what I mean. It's almost like a guilt process from some blokes. Do you see what I mean? So in other words, some men feel so bad about the way that women were treated for so long, and then arguably still are in many cases. You know, there's still quite a fair whack of inequality going on amongst men and women. And I wonder whether or not it's almost like a sort of a way of sort of inadvertently making up for it.
But is it just women? That's the thing. We're talking here. It's not an easy question or simple or short thing to answer, because absolutely there is the whole issue with women. But I'm going to provoke a little bit something different. What about the masculine way of aggression? Which again, Russ, for you, this wasn't something that appeared too much, which is absolutely beautiful. But for a lot of men, it is happening. And a lot of men are suffering just like women from that male aggression. A lot of men feel themselves not good enough, not capable to lead their way in the world, because they feel that attacked just the same as women in a way by that aggression of men. And it's still a lot of times in the workplace, in politics, in many places, we will see that the people who get into the control, into the lead, will get there by leading from a very aggressive place. And whether if it's a woman or a man, a lot of women adopted really well those male masculine traits that are about slightly aggression. Can we change that reality? Can we make leadership that is more compassionate, that is more listening, more open?
Well, how's that working out?
I believe we can. And it's not a man or women.
No, but you know what? Something you've just said there, but something you've just said there has made me think, and it's a dangerous process when I think, so forgive me, because I think out loud a lot of the time. But for so many years, everyone has been, typically speaking, on the receiving end of some sort of, shall we say, abuse. Now, I'm not talking about domestic abuse or anything horrendous, by the way. You know, obviously that's completely different. I'm talking about legal abuse. In other words, if you will, being the subject of a verbal punching bag. So let's just say that when someone might be driving, for example, there was always this sort of great notion about how suddenly it's apparently men were better drivers than women. A load of bunkum, we know. But the point is that part and parcel of that frustration, people would say something like, oh, women drivers or something like that. Now, of course, that's totally unacceptable, and rightly so. The reason why I bring this up is I wonder whether or not, because men are sort of the last acceptable verbal punching bag, that suddenly all frustration is vented and aimed towards men, suddenly applying that pressure and sort of completely tipping that balance amongst other people who would otherwise be on the receiving end of it. Does that make sense? Do you see what I mean?
I see what you mean, but I don't look at it as everything. I don't see it as a global thing. The fact that I see around me all the time is that a lot of men feel quite lost. A lot of men feel that they don't really know what's going on here with this life. A lot of men are struggling with the relationship. Not all, but there are a lot of men who have these issues. And as men, we don't really have where to go with these things. Women naturally, and again, we are generalizing like crazy here, but in general, women find it more comfortable to go to a cafe or to give a phone call to another person and to have a conversation about it and vent things out. Men has the tendency to kind of, I will figure out by myself. And I'm noticing it with people that I work with who are very open. They still struggle to call another guy to ask for support. And I think that's something that needs to change, because a lot of men don't, for good reasons, they don't want to go to therapy or all that kind of route because they don't really need it. But what other ways we can have it? So we will go with our friends and we're going to laugh about football and we're going to put a smile on and we're going to take the piss out of each other and we'll have some good time. But under that surface, there are a lot of issues that need to be taken care of. And to take care of those places, a lot of times all it requires is a safe space for us to talk honestly without all the bullshit and the facade as men. And once we do that, we acknowledge the fact that, hey, I have some struggles. There's nothing wrong with me for having these struggles. And a lot of men, unfortunately, and I've seen it a lot over the years, carry this heavy, massive weight on their shoulders, thinking that that thought or emotion that they have in them, and it's something that I experience myself and I experience with a lot of people that I work with, thinking that that thing that I'm carrying, I'm the only idiot or horrible or ugly man who carries that weight. And it's another year and another year and another year, and it kills the soul. What happens if we create those safe spaces and a man can just get the courage to say, this is how I feel, this is what I'm thinking about. And at that moment to see that 4 or 5 other guys raise their hand and say, me too, suddenly you understand that this way that you're carrying isn't yours only and you can let that go. That's massive. But as men, we don't have really, it's not common enough to have these spaces to talk brutally honest about things, not to try to make it nice. And
what do those spaces look like? Sorry, are you talking about it maybe a physical group, a get-together of other guys who are in a similar position? Are you talking about an attitude in society where we just graciously accept the fact that some people do struggle, or is it a case of in the media? Where are these safe spaces that you speak of? What are they? What do they look like?
It's what we mentioned in the beginning. So it's the work that I do, plus many other organizations that offer this kind of work. And I think we need to make that as the mainstream. My goal is that in 10 years, having men's groups around that you can go and do this kind of thing will be as obvious as having a supermarket in every neighborhood. Right now, when we talk about men's group, for people, it's like, what is this thing? It sounds very awkward, very weird. There's so many misconceptions and stigmas around it. And I think we need to just break that, because once men will have that accessible without that needing to be something you need to be shameful about or weird about for being part of, everything will be better, I really believe. And it's not about that just men need help, and it's just not about that men are the problematic. It's not about that, but it is an issue that we need to take care of. And it's a big issue, I think.
You know, there's a billion things that you've brought up, so I'd like to rewind, if I may. One of the things is, you know, talking about leadership with loads of compassion and this, that, and the other. You look what's happening in America now. This is what they wanted. Look what they've got. You look what's happening in Canada now with Trudeau. This is what they wanted. This is what they thought they wanted. Boom. Doesn't really work out too well, does it? So it's a balance, because with politics and leadership, you can't be all touchy-feely. Stuff has to get done. Stuff has to get done.
Absolutely agree with you. So with that in mind, how many of us do the work to create that real balance? And that's what I'm talking about. And that's a lot of times the issue that I found, that we don't have this space. So if we take the two extremes of what we call, and again, we can call it masculine and feminine traits. We can call it alpha, omega. We can call it yin yang, whatever you want, whatever the name that works for you.
Okay.
On the masculine side, we have the being decisive, getting things done, as you said, having strategy, moving forward, having this thing. Yeah, that's one extreme side. The other extreme side will have the feminine traits, or the omega, or whatever the name is, where it's compassion, self-awareness, love, care. Yeah, these two edges. Most of us in life, we get stuck somewhere in that scale. I am very masculine, the Donald Trump character, you know, boom, 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 my way or no way. And that's my father's way as well. This is the thing. Everybody else is idiots. It doesn't really matter. Boom, that's that extreme. If I take it, let's take this as an extreme. Or the other extreme of, I am very loving, but I'm also very needy, and I'm very constantly need to be emotional. These are the extremes. We all get stuck somewhere on that scale. So we might be somewhere in the middle where we can make some decisions and stuff, but we're also very emotional. But where can we actually practice to be able to move freely from that edge to this edge, as you say? Because in leadership, sometimes I will have to cut decisions and make things, this is how we were going forward, and we have to adopt that. And in other times, we need to slow down and understand that somebody here needs attention, and we need to slow down and bring more the emotional side. How many of us really have the capacity and flexibility to move freely there to what's needed in the moment? That
it's called, and I keep coming back to the same thing, common sense. It's nothing, Yaron, it's nothing mystical.
So
it's not some mystical quest. It's really pretty basic stuff. Again,
so
to rewind just for a second, there's nothing wrong in being decisive.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong in saying, this is where we're going. This is what I want to do. If you don't want to come with, that's absolutely fine. But that's where I'm going. That's my focus. That's my goal. Come with
me. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing wrong with recognizing it doesn't always appeal to the masses.
Yeah, but you can't do everything. You can't always do everything by sheer consensus. You just can't. You know, if a committee sets out to design a racehorse, you end up with a camel. All I'm saying...
But Russ, there's a question for you, because you say it's common sense, yet I've listened to you guys a few times, and I hear your frustration a lot of times at people for doing this or not doing this or that. So this common sense isn't really working out there because a lot of people don't have it. Now, it's not that they don't have the capacity to have it. It's just that we don't create enough spaces for people to cultivate that common sense, as you call it, or we can call it many different ways. That's what I'm talking about. How can we create more spaces?
What would you call it? All right, let's not use the word common sense, because that, you know, would remind me of my mum and dad. But most of life, if you use common sense, most stuff can be resolved or discussed. It's not that tricky. I'm not talking about deep psychological issues. That is tricky. I'm talking about going through life on a daily basis. Use your common sense, and most times you'll be absolutely fine. Give me another name for it, because you've obviously thought about this a lot, and I would love another term because I don't want to be banging on about the same thing all the time.
Another name for common sense, what you describe as common sense.
Yeah.
Balance, I think, is a good word.
Balance. Well, that goes beautifully with what Alex is saying. It's about being able to travel the spectrum fluidly. Yeah. Absolutely right. So why do people find that so difficult? Why do people find it so difficult to be empathetic, which kind of is the heart of all of this, isn't it?
Because, again, I'm not saying that what I say is the right answer, but from what I have seen...
No, but we value your opinion on it. Let's put that way.
Yeah. So what I have seen, and I think with Alex, when I did the interview with Alex, by the way, hey, Alex, when I did the interview with Alex, she started it with the fact that I said that I am a white privileged man. And that is true. I come from a family, you know, that I could access these things. But if I would be born to a family where there is a different type of energy, a lot of people don't have a very healthy space to grow up into, whether it's within their families, in their schools, in their environment. So the level of awareness that we have is limited to where we were brought in. And I think raising our self-awareness, and again, maybe that sounds to you as well, whatever the words that you used before us, like call it hippie or whatever, I don't think it is. I think that by growing our self-awareness and understanding that what we know until now is what we know until now, but there is so much more that we can learn and develop and adopt and grow to make our lives richer, beautiful, more connected, less frustrating, more meaningful. That's in a way, that's for me. Does that answer your question somehow? I don't know.
Do you feel guilty about being white? Do you feel guilty about being middle class?
I sometimes...
Do you feel guilty about the fact you've made something of yourself? Do you feel guilty about these things?
No, I used to.
Are you made to feel guilty? There's a difference.
No, that wasn't the question I was asking. I was asking if Euron felt guilty.
No, I know, but that's what I mean. I'm saying I'm wondering whether or not that comes from a place of where I believe that most people in said position are being made to feel guilty in this day and age. That's the whole point. So if someone does feel guilty, I don't think they should. I don't think anyone should feel guilty for who they are or what they have. Personally.
You can't feel guilty about stuff you can't do anything about.
I don't think
bullshit. I am. It's complete nonsense. You can't feel guilty about... This is it. This is the cards you were dealt. You can't feel guilty about it.
Do you think there's a danger we overthink everything in this life?
Bloody right.
We spend most of the time in our heads. Totally. Yeah, that's thinking is an epidemic that we don't talk about. We talk about COVID a lot. But the fact that we spend constantly time thinking and we live our lives mostly in our thoughts about things that might happen. Usually it's quite dark for a lot of people.
Very dark.
And we literally live our lives by these thoughts that reflect nothing of the reality. And meanwhile, we have, some trees in front of us or kids running around or we do the work that we do. If we just stop for a second talking about common sense and understand that all that crazy stuff that runs in our head is completely imaginary, and we just stop and look at what is right now, we definitely overthink.
Be that as it may, but where does this overthinking come from? Is this because we're sort of almost encouraged to overanalyze?
We're told to.
Yeah.
We're told to.
That's what I fear as well.
Yaron,
we are told to.
Yaron, can I... I'm going to bring this down to a really basic level. One of our... somebody came on as a guest, and I was so impressed. And we had a long conversation, he and I gave him his own series. And I tell you why. Because you've talked about overthinking. We all do it. Negative thoughts. We all have them. Catastrophizing. Every expert we've had on says 95% of the terrible stuff that 3 a.m. you think is going to happen never happens. Doesn't exist. It's in your head. And this guy, Cuddy Cudsworth, came up with this. A little elastic band, right? It has been the most practical, simple, and effective thing. You're getting these terrible thoughts. You feel bad. Boom. A little reminder. Stop it. Tell that voice in your head to F off. And I actually do. I stand in my kitchen and aloud, tell it to F off in no uncertain terms. because
You can't believe how many times he's fallen out with Ebony the dog because she misinterprets.
She's still on a bloody play date. She's been gone 3 days. She's having such a great time. The thing is this. I'm not doing a big plug for Cuddy's show, but it's been a huge hit. We can boil things down to taking some control for ourselves, even with a little 2-bit. You don't even need this. Get an elastic band, for Christ's sake. It arrives with your post free of charge. We have the opportunity to change the way we think. So important. So important. Overthinking stops us from taking action.
Absolutely.
Yaron, for heaven's sakes, would you please come back and speak to us again? Because there is so much more to talk to you about.
Love you.
With pleasure.
Would you come back? We'd really like you to come back. There's so much more we haven't even touched on. But, tempers fugit. But thank you. It's been really, really interesting. And thank you, Alex. Wonderful recommendation to our lovely Alexandra Lichtenfeld with her own show as well. Yaron, been quality, if I may say so. Absolute quality. Please come back. We'd love to see.
I will do.
Okay.
Toda rabah. Farewell.
And keep doing what you guys are doing because it's important. So let's.
We're trying, but thank you so much. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. I like him. I like him a lot.
Wow.
I like him a lot. I liked him a lot. I thought he was excellent. Should we lighten the mood?
What an excellent idea.
See, in the old days, you'd say, let's lighten the mood. And here's the thing. How would you feel about this, Shanters? In the old days, you say, can we lighten the mood and allow some glamour into the program? And immediately you think, no, you can't say that.
I don't mind if you say that. It doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Here's the thing. I'm sorry. I know that's not why you're not.
The problem is it bothers me because he implies that he hasn't already got it. But let's not dwell on that.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Listen. Here's the thing. Right. It's like you're at the top of your game. You've come right the way through your career. You're entitled to say, yes, I would find that offensive, in which case I would never say it. Or you can say, no, I'm really very happy with that. But the world we live in, even if you were happy with that, even if you didn't know me, everybody else, people you'd never met, would be, you can't say that. She's going to be upset. You don't know her. Why don't you ask if she'd be upset? This is what I'm talking about, common sense.
I can't see many women being offended by that. And if they are offended by it, they haven't got a sense of humour.
Oh, well, that's been banned. That's been banned. We know we can't have a sense of humour. That's not allowed.
I have to say, you're talking about some very heavy subjects today, which are real knotty problems, because the way that you talk about being a bloke, it makes me think about my response to that and how I can make that better for other people who are not of my gender. I mean, there's some really interesting stuff that you're talking about, and I really enjoyed what Yaron had to say over the last half an hour. But times are difficult; they really are. I don't think that people quite know where they are in the world at the moment, and I think men in general are going, am I the provider? Am I the guy in the bearskin? Am I the head of the household? All of these really difficult questions are being asked, and I don't think we've got the answers yet.
But the problem is, Chantal, this kind of goes back to what I was banging on about earlier, is that by and large, okay, I might have been a bit blunt when I said most of us are stupid, okay? That's fair enough. That's a very blunt way of putting it. But I'm kind of being serious that in the primitive sense, we are naturally simple creatures, and there is nothing wrong with that. This is what irritates me, is that we're sort of under such pressure for everyone to be an expert at everything, when the truth is most of us are experts at nothing, and it doesn't matter that we're not experts at anything. This is that's so frustrating, is because actually if we stop and think to ourselves, the reason why life has been, although okay to some, unpalatable, so black and white for so many years, is because actually it's what we cope with well. So when we say it's men and women, it's not possibly cis men, gender weird. Do you know what I mean? It's the reason why we don't have all of these choices, because we're not actually capable of processing this kind of information on this scale.
Speaking of which leads neatly onto this. Monday, my special guest is the wonderful actor, James Dreyfus. I've been after him for ages to come on the show.
Wow.
I'm a big, big fan of James. And I reached out and he was so lovely. And he's coming on on Monday for a whole raft of reasons. Now, James Dreyfus is a brilliant. If you remember Gimme, 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 which brings us back to the TV.
I've only recently rewatched it, actually.
It was just fantastically funny. James, who's openly gay, all right, is being attacked so badly. And I've watched this for week after week after week in areas that I do not understand. I'm not going to make light of it. I'm not making fun of it because I genuinely don't understand the problem people have with him. And it's from, and it's the whole transgender issue. And that's what we're going to be talking about, because I either need an education in this or to say this is just rubbish, go away, I'm not interested. Somewhere between the two. But the abuse he has had is incredible.
And I'm sorry to hear that.
And I wanted to give him, and it's made him depressed. So we're going to talk about depression because he suffers from depression. So we're going to be talking about that on Monday. It all starts at 12 o'clock. And we're going to be talking about the issues that he's had on social media, because it's been vile.
Yeah.
From this tiny group. And as I keep saying, empty vessels make the loudest noise. And that's what I think is happening. People are so people are just horrible.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether or not there is a specific cultural reference that one should make at the knowledge that James Dreyfus is going to join us on the program on Monday. All I should say to that is goody. And to anyone who's followed his career will know what that refers to.
Oh, that's
So
very clever. But well done. Yeah. He was always one of my absolute favorite actors. So we chit chat on social media.
I'm sure it'll be a great interview. I shall look out.
I hope so. What has come across your professional and erudite eye?
Well, I might have been a little bit more sensitive about my first two choices had I thought about this conversation and the order in which I'm going to tell you about what to watch on telly.
Don't worry.
Because the first two dramas both feature female leads. But they're people that we love. They're both great actors. One is Suran Jones, who is in a brand new program.
No wrong.
Yeah, brand new drama on the BBC called Vigil, and the other is Nicola Walker, who's also a big favourite of mine, and she is in a new drama on Alibi, and they both start bizarrely, both series. The Alibi series, which is called Annika, and Annika is the Nicola Walker character.
Annika Stranded.
Indeed, indeed. So you have a bit.
Do you not
knowledge.
know that do you not know the backstory of this?
No, I don't.
You don't know about my Annika Stranded obsession?
No.
On BBC 4 Extra, when I'm walking Ebony, I'm always listening to programs. I'm a huge Nicola Walker fan. I think she is incredible. I have been for many, many, many years.
And just to remind people, she was in Spooks. She was in Last Tango in Halifax. She was in
Unforgotten.
Unforgotten. I mean, just
you almost forgot that.
Yeah.
So there's a little program. It's only 15 minutes long. And talk about niche. How the hell they came up with this? Yeah. And she plays a character called Annika Strandhed, who works for, wait for this, everyone, the Norwegian boat police. You heard that right. She operates out of a boat in Norway, which is, size of a postage stamp. And it's a monologue. But the way that it's presented as this monologue, only starring her, is the whole story. I don't know. It's the most genius piece of writing. If I could write like that, I would die a happy man. And of course, she does it magnificently. And I've been thinking for years, oh God, this would be a great TV show. And then I saw they'd made it into a TV show. I was so overexcited.
They have.
Now I can't watch it. It's on. Can I watch it on Alibi? Yes, I can. I've got Alibi.
Alibi, certainly. Alibi is one of the channels on Sky. Alibi is part of UK TV. So if you've got the UK TV service, you can find it.
Oh, good. This is fantastic news. When does it start?
So it's already started. We're up to episode 2 already. And that and Vigil, which I'll come on to, both start with a fishing boat in Scotland. So the series that we're talking about, the Nicola Walker series, has been moved from the Norwegian radio series, which you love.
No, she's Scottish now.
She's now Scottish. So she is head of the marine homicide unit off the west coast of Scotland.
Jesus.
But she still does her monologues.
The marine homicide unit, is that even a thing? Good gracious me.
Yeah. Go to Mac Fisheries.
How many fish are murdered?
Loads.
Well, yes. There are the body count's pretty high. So
like Midsummer Murders, where it's just got the most sort of astronomical level of people waiting to be killed in a county that no one's ever heard of.
Not quite. There's not that many people are going to get murdered.
I mean, that is staggering.
You wouldn't move to Midsummer, would you? It would be a big
Thank you. That is exactly my point. What on earth? You know full well when any storyline comes up in Midsummer Murders, someone's just moved to the area. Why? Why have you just moved to the area? Have you not heard about this place?
Two places you don't want to move to, right? Anywhere that Agatha Raisin lives, because you're going to die, and she lives in a village the size of a village green. Agatha Raisin, the MC Beaton books, which the books are actually better than the TV show, and you don't want to move to Midsummer at all because you will die.
And actually, on that note, why would anyone give Rosemary and Thyme a job doing their garden? They're going to end up dead. What's the point?
Completely right. Completely right. Anyway,
digress. I'm so sorry. So the marine, the marine murder society,
the marine homicide unit.
Well,
and needless to say, there is a fishing boat in part one that is slowly drifting across some part of Western Scotland, and a body is found with a harpoon gun in it. So that's the beginning of that one. But it's good. It is quirky because she does do these, she breaks the fourth wall, as they say in theatre, and she turns around and she looks at the camera and she speaks to the camera, which some people find really irritating and often infuriating. And if you don't mind the fourth wall being broken, then it's just a nice, interesting device because it engages you with that character in a sort of different way.
What's your opinion on that? Does that draw you in or does it irritate you?
Funny enough, it irritates me because I'm slightly more of a purist and I don't like it. I mean, I don't know if you've read John Fowles, the writer who, great British writer from the 20th century, but he would talk to the reader. Thackeray, again, would talk to the reader and say, "Dear reader, something, something, something."
Oh, I hate that.
And I think, no, don't do that.
You know what? Because it shatters the flow.
Yeah. I don't like the spell being broken. So I prefer cinema and telly to theatre. I mean, I like going to the theatre, but it's not my favourite because somehow it engages me. Yeah, well, I love the panto too. Anyway, Alibi's looking good. First 2 episodes are out. It's not Alibi, Annika on Alibi. So have a look at that. Gorgeous Nicola Walker. The other one that's come out has had a lot of money spent on it. It's called Vigil, which is HMS Vigil, which is a nuclear submarine. It is written and comes from the Line of Duty crowd. So you've got, BAFTA winners up the wazoo and back again who have come together on this. Saran Jones is a police officer. And there is a death on a submarine off the coast of Scotland. And Saran Jones is brought in and is sent to the boat. I now know that these are called boats. They're not called ships. Anyway, who knew? And she is then stuck under the water in this submarine for what starts out to be 3 days, and it looks as though that's going to be 3 weeks while she tries to solve it.
Oh, jeez.
But at the same time, the show actually opens with a fishing boat, which looks as though it's being pulled backwards by something underwater. And the suggestion is that it's probably a submarine that basically makes this fishing boat end up at the bottom of the sea. So there are 2 stories. There are lots of twists and lots of tales. The backstories are quite big. The sort of lover, girlfriend, possibly ex-girlfriend of the Saran Jones character is a brilliant actress, Rose Leslie, who was in Game of Thrones. She's based back on land. So she's trying to uncover the whole what's going on. Is this something about Polaris missiles? Is there a bigger story here? And it's great. So the first 2 episodes have dropped. And
where is that again?
Sorry?
It's BBC, isn't it?
BBC. It's BBC One.
I suspect actually that sounds to me a little bit like. So I'm sorry, people are going to say, "Oh, you can't say that just because she's playing a lesbian character." But is there any influence, do you think, with off the back of her success in Gentleman Jack, that the BBC are trying to cash in on that? Because she was superb as Anne Lister in Gentleman Jack, and I just worry. I worry that sort of if they found a niche that Saran Jones to play, I hope they're not cashing in on it.
Well, I would doubt it, Phil, is the answer. I think that people employ Saran Jones because she's brilliant.
She really is.
She can play any
can
character.
Do no wrong.
She can, and actually, I don't think sexuality's got anything to do with it, really.
Fine.
You know, she can be a police.
I hope not, because I'd hate to think that was the case.
I really don't think so.
You see, I want to mix the TV shows now, because she was the girlfriend of Endeavour in real life. Ooh.
Was she?
Apparently so.
Who? What? Huh? Say, hang on. Whoa. Back up. Say again.
So.
Sorry.
I think so. Because he's a fabulous actor.
He's a great actor, and I'm desperately trying to think of his name. I didn't know that. Okay, well, that's good intel there.
They're not anymore. I don't think they're together anymore, but I think they were.
All right.
No, well, it was. My mother is asking, Chantal, have you seen the Hit and Run series on Netflix?
No, I haven't. No.
It's I believe that it is. I don't know everything about it, but my understanding is it's part set in New York, part set in Tel Aviv, and it's quite mafia based, almost, as it were.
No, I haven't seen it, but I have now written it down. So
she does see that the only problem is every other word is the F word.
Fine by me. If it's all right with your mum, it's all right with me, Phil.
Oh, there you go. Emma Webb has come to the rescue. Sean Evans plays Endeavour.
Sean Evans. Absolutely right. It is Sean Evans. And in fact, Sean Evans, come to think of it, is in this. And I didn't know that there was a connection.
Ooh.
So there we are.
Well, yes, you see, everything's full circle.
Yeah, he plays one of the Submariners. Anyway, it's Vigil. It's BBC One. There are 2 episodes on the iPlayer. I think it's every Monday night for 6 full weeks. It's had a ton of money spent on it, and I think it's really worth watching. But it is a traditional sort of, locked room murder mystery.
It's the locked room murder mystery. It's if for those of you who don't know, what the very earliest of the crime novels written in the very sort of mid 1800s, late 1800s was always called the locked room mystery, and it starts with the concept is a murder has taken place, but the room is locked. How did it happen? And that extends to Sherlock Holmes. It's in the great tradition of crime drama.
Absolutely. Anyway, so then I thought, well, having done a couple of dramas, that I should stretch my brain a bit. And we are just about to come up to the anniversary of 9/11. And 9/11 is interesting because, most of us will remember going through it. We know where we were. There are about 3 or 4 times in one's life where something happens externally and you can literally pinpoint that moment in time and know exactly who you were with and where you were.
Diana's death. Yeah, 9/11. Where else, Chantal?
I remember Lennon's death, and I remember Elvis Presley's death, and I remember Terry Wogan's death. Strangely,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and clearly 9/11. I was at work. I was running the Food Network, working in the West End, and we were all at the pub actually. Yeah. And somebody got a message.
Research purposes, obviously.
Yeah, indeed. But somebody got a message through from Reuters to say that there was some news coming through from New York and everybody needed to get in front of a television. So we watched it on a big sports screen in the pub. And it was even more dramatic because actually it was, 10 feet high and 8 feet across or whatever it was, or the other way around. It was so full in my eyes. I can absolutely
do you know what, Chantal? The day of 9/11, I was in a television studio. I was editing something we'd made. So, of course, I was surrounded by dozens of screens. So just like you, I was there watching. Oh, God, it was horrible.
Yeah,
I was at school.
Horrible.
You were
at school. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Just
Well,
shut
Phil,
up.
if you want to know what was happening, there are two really good documentaries. The first of those is called 9/11 Inside the President's War Room. So it literally starts from the moment that the first plane hits. And then you cut to footage of where the president was, and he was in a school in Sarasota in Florida, just about to go in to give a small, talk to some school children. So you get the outside story. Yeah, you get the outside story, and then you get the inside story of what Bush was going through, and the chaos that took place. So their first thing was, well, first of all, he didn't react in the schoolroom and get up and leave straight away. He stayed there. Yeah. Then they were thinking, we're in a school, we can't communicate back with Washington, D.C. because there are no secure lines. So they raced as fast as they could, closing every single street as they went in the motorcade back to the airport. They got on the plane, and then they didn't know where they were going. Should they go back to Washington or not go back to Washington? And you see these arguments breaking out about whether they should go back to Washington. And they've got
and is this actual footage?
Footage and contributors, including Bush himself, people who were on Air Force One. It's incredibly well put together. It's a really good documentary. Honestly, I think I'm going to watch it again at the weekend. They land at one Air Force base, and they think in Nebraska, which is not on the way to Washington and DC, I can tell you. And then they go down into a bunker, and then there's this whole conversation about, should he be appearing in front of the American people from a bunker? Is it going to look like running away? Then you hear from somebody who's in the war room with him. When somebody comes round, they're thinking that they may be under attack from anthrax, and somebody starts handing out anti-anthrax pills. And this guy takes all 7 at once without realizing he's supposed to take 1 a day for 7 days. I mean, these are tiny little moments. But when you watch this documentary, you just think, oh my God, this was a total bloody mess. Absolutely fascinating. George Bush then says, no, we're going back to Washington. He then gets overruled and persuaded otherwise by his Secret Service, who go, it's not safe, because they think Washington clearly is under attack at that stage. Then there's a whole story about the United 93, which was the plane that came down in Pennsylvania. And what they didn't know was whether the American Air Force had shot it down or whether it had been brought down by the passengers. They had no idea. They were phoning everybody going, did we shoot it down? Did we shoot it down? And you're thinking, how do people not know this? This is just extraordinary.
It was absolute pandemonium. And it goes, do you know what, Chantal? It goes back to everything that we keep saying. We assume, this isn't about TV, but we assume the people who run our lives are infinitely smarter, much more educated, and very clever, and know what they're doing. Yeah. And my view, which is why I always feel so adrift, is I don't think they have any more knowledge than I do. I wouldn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do.
Yeah, common sense. It's back to common sense.
Thank you. But, it was such an extreme. He was deeply criticized. He was sitting on, one of those, it was like a kindergarten school, very, very young kids. Right. And he was sitting in a kind of like a little classroom with surrounded, and he was reading from a very sweet little book. Somebody came in and whispered in his ear, and you can see the look on his face going, I can't believe what I've just been told. This couldn't be more extreme from the real sweetness of being with little children who are our future, after all, innocent little babies, and an act of such horrific magnitude. Yeah. And I'm not surprised he sat there and, looked stunned. And it was so easy for the lovey left to say, oh, look at him. What would you do if you'd just been told a plane had just flown into the World Trade Center? Yeah. Who the hell would have thought that was even possible?
It's really worth watching. But if you're interested in that, I think you'll also be interested in another documentary that the BBC have brought out.
Can you I'm sorry, Chantal, just tell us one more time the name of that, where we can find it.
So that one was called 9/11 Inside the President's War Room. and it's a 90-minute special, but it's honestly, I cannot recommend it more highly.
Where was that? Sorry, where was that on?
It's on the BBC. I think it was BBC Two, and even The Guardian gave it 5 stars, and deservedly so. I would have given it 6. The other one, which is much more appropriate, I think, for the radio station, is called Surviving 9/11, and it takes 13 people whose lives were affected by losing somebody in 9/11. So there's a lot of talk about grief and about how you cope, and about the sort of shared understanding of a day that created all these terrible deaths, but how different people were affected by that. And some of them were saying that they had to go over and over and over again to memorials, and they were just memorialed out by the end of it. And others just saying, I couldn't do it. I couldn't go there. I had to do this on my own. There's an extraordinary family where a young man dies. The brother's clearly very affected. They're a British family. The brother clearly affected by his brother's death. And the father internalizes the whole thing. But the brother has become a conspiracy theorist, going, this was all the conspiracy, and it wasn't this and it wasn't that, and has read every single book on 9/11. And the father's a very gentle soul who goes back to the place where he was walking in Wales on the day of 9/11 to relive that walk all over again when his son had died. But for those listeners who, we've talked about grief 1,000 times, and it's just worth watching, because actually there are life-enhancing moments that come through in these really amazing, true human stories. So it is sad. It's a serious subject, but it's also very well made, and I think it's very apt, and I think it's a good watch.
And one does have to as well give credit as well to any documentary maker who wants to take on that subject, because whatever you do, you're going to be scrutinized to the hills to make sure that you do it with the sensitivity it deserves. And by the sound of it, you found certainly 2 that do that. Glassy Amanda says, what's it called? 9/11 Inside what? Inside the President's War Room. Was that right?
War Room. Yeah. And the other one is called Surviving 9/11. And they're both on the BBC iPlayer. And very, very well made productions.
Have I got time to just quickly plug a film which I wrote?
Please do.
It's called The Dry, set in the outback in Australia. Stars the wonderful Eric Bana, who I'm a big fan of. He's always good. And it's a guy who is a detective in Melbourne, and he goes back to this small town. He's got a horrible, horrible history there. It's really clever. Really, really clever, and you really feel that claustrophobic atmosphere of being in this tiny little town where everybody knows everybody else's business, or they think they do. I'll leave it there.
Chantal, have you got any quick fire suggestions as we hurtle towards 2:00?
Quick fire, very good but hard real life crime series on Channel 4 called Deceit, which is about the Rachel Nickel murder and the sting operation.
Gracious me.
The sting operation, it's really quite something. You see how messy the whole thing became. There was a honey trap that tried to capture Colin Stagg, and it all goes horribly wrong. It's worth watching, but it's brutal stuff. I just want to, caveat that. It's very good drama, and the Irish actress who plays the undercover policewoman is incredibly good. Just lost her name, but she plays this role of Lizzie James, who is, nobody's ever found out who Lizzie James was, but the whole thing was a wretched mess, but very good 4-part drama, and I think she'll be up for awards next year.
That was a shocking, I remember that case. That was on the Common, wasn't it?
It was Wimbledon Common.
Wimbledon Common.
Yeah.
So I used to fly over that regularly, and I never knew her, obviously. I was just a punter reading the papers, but I always thought of her when I flew over the Wimbledon Common. It was a horrible case. Horrible. There we are.
Chantal, thank you so much. As
Pleasure.
ever, always, you never cease to amaze us with your knowledge and with your ability to offer a broad range.
Brain like a planet.
A smorgasbord of televisual feasting. Thank you very much indeed. And have yourself a great week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Chantal. Goodbye. There we go.
Wow. Fantastic recommendations from Chantal. She
not that we'd
knows
expect
her
anything
onions.
less, of course.
She knows her onions, does she not?
Now, look, we've raised some pretty heavy subjects
Yes, we
during
have.
today's show,
We have,
and
we really
I would
have.
absolutely insist, Russ and I would both insist, I've no doubt, as with anyone at Men's Radio, that if you have anything that you've been affected by or anything like that, and you don't know where the heck to turn to start with, please do start with Samaritans, because they are a very good place to start. They've got lots of great advice, lots of very friendly, non-judgmental people there who help you, like our very own Alexander Lichtenfeld, to name but one. And
can I just point out as well, you do, and I'm going to be graphic, but bear with me because we're all grown up. You don't need to be standing on the ledge on the 85th floor before you phone them. You don't. It's not for that. That is a misconception. You can phone them about anything.
They're an advice, apart from anything, they can even be an advice service. But 116123 is the number. You just call 116123, and you can, I believe, you can also text that number as well. But, or of course, you can always email Joe at samaritans.org. So thank you very much.
Is that J-O-E?
I believe it is J-O-E. I need to
put in both.
Put
in both J-O or J-O-E. It is important because so many people think, no, I have to be. You don't have to be suicidal. Please phone them. Please reach out.
Absolutely.
Reach out.
Thank you so much to all of our guests. Thank you very much to Dr. Jeff Foster. Thank you as well to absolutely the marvelous Euron Engler as well, and of course Chantal Rickards. We will see you Monday, if I'm not very much mistaken.
James Dreyfus.
Indeed, James Dreyfus, Monday from midday. Thank you so much.